Make sure to let us know where you are watching from by leaving a comment below before we start the story. Please remember to give this video a like and subscribe if you find it entertaining. Wishing you a good day. Have fun with the tale. The red gown was being smoothed against Evelyn Carter's contours as she stood in front of the full-length mirror. Even though she was experiencing uneasiness in her stomach, the hue was a wonderful complement to her deep golden complexion, and it made her feel radiant instead. Tonight was like no other. She celebrated her 29th birthday and the first anniversary of her marriage to Julian. Participated in the festivities together in the grand ballroom of the Regency Hotel. As she adjusted the silver necklace that was her mother's necklace, she muttered, "Just perfect." The necklace was at her throat. "The final gift before cancer took her life 2 years ago," she said. A woman of unmistakable beauty was mirrored in the mirror for all to see. She had eyes the shape of almonds, cheekbones that were high, and big lips that were painted a soft mauve. The natural hair that she wore was done in a sophisticated updo, and the tendrils that framed her face were handled with caution. Her phone rang with a message from the event planner, verifying that everything had been put up in accordance with the requirements. Evelyn let out a slow exhalation in an effort to discharge the stress that had been building up for several weeks. She reassured her reflection that he would be present, and he made a vow. During the first year of their marriage, everything had begun like a fairy tale. Julian Hayes, with his dazzling grin and ambitious goals, had rushed into her life and charmed her with his attention when she was still grieving the loss of her mother. He had accompanied her on her journey through the grieving process. Immediately following their encounter at a gallery opening that showcased her architectural design work, the handsome venture investor had pursued her with unrelenting determination. The culmination of their whirlwind courtship was a wedding that, although it was not costly, had felt like the perfect wedding for Evelyn. It has been 6 months since the problems first appeared. Julian's company took on a number of high-risk clients, and the strain caused him to undergo a transformation. Soon, staying up late became the norm. As soon as he arrived home, he became agitated and distracted. Conversations that were abrupt and separate bedtimes took the place of the passionate nights and tender gazes that had been shared between them. Evelyn reassured herself that it was merely a transitional period. Each and every marriage has them. In the evening, things would be different. To serve as a reminder to Julian of the things they had accomplished together, Evelyn had spent weeks organizing this party. With great care, she had invited 100 people, delicately blending their family members, friends, and co-workers. Some of Julian's favorite dishes were included on the menu. Everyone in the band was aware of his favorite songs, and the entire occasion was a celebration not only of their anniversary but also of the bright future that lies ahead. Above all else, she was in possession of the watch. The jewelry box that Evelyn had unlocked revealed a sleek black case that she had removed. On the inside, Julian's dream timepiece was a limited edition Audemars Pig watch with a sapphire-studded bezel. It was nestled on midnight velvet and was wrapped in midnight velvet. A number of months ago, she had made the observation that he was appreciating it, his eyes remaining fixed on it even as he chuckled about how expensive it was. The small parcel of land in Georgia that Evelyn's mother had bequeathed her was the most valuable item that she had lost as a result of this transaction. In addition to the amount of land and trees, the property symbolized a great deal more. It was the location where she and her mother had spent every summer on a picnic under the expansive willow tree. There, they would lay on blankets and watch meteor showers while daydreaming about the future. In the location where her mother had intended to construct a retirement house at some point in the future, Evelyn had sketched drawings that she would later elaborate on with her professional skills. As Evelyn touched the silver necklace, she muttered, "I know you understand, Mama. As you always said, genuine love is worth making any sacrifice for." When she thought back to the day she signed the sale papers, she felt a tightening in her chest. In order to provide the groundwork for the construction of luxury residences, the developer had already identified the old willow for destruction. In response to her inquiry about the possibility of preserving it, he had chuckled and referred to it as just another tree. That tree had been the location where her mother's ashes had been dispersed, as she had specifically requested that they be kept in the location that she loved the most. Evelyn shoved the distressing recollection to the side. If it meant that she could reunite with the man she had fallen in love with, then the sacrifice would be well worth it. Because of the ringing of her doorbell, the automobile service arrived. Evelyn gave the watch case one more look in the mirror before tucking it into her clutch and heading out the door. The butterflies in her stomach were no longer caused by fear, but rather by anticipation. Through Evelyn's meticulous direction, the enormous ballroom of the Regency Hotel was converted into a beautiful space. Over tables that were wrapped in ivory linens, crystal chandeliers produced a warm glow that was comforting. Scarlet roses were arranged in a centerpiece that was suspended from silver vases, and candles were used to create intimate pools of light. During the cocktail hour, visitors were mingling with one another as a string quartet performed softly in the vicinity of the dance floor, which remained vacant. As she stood near the entryway, Evelyn greeted those who had arrived with a generous grin that concealed none of the rising uneasiness she was experiencing. As the event had progressed for 45 minutes, Julian had not yet made his appearance. Amara, Evelyn's best friend since college, approached with 2 champagne glasses and asked, "The man of the hour still stuck at the office?" Amara was asked this question as she approached. It would appear that Evelyn responded while taking a momentary sip. "He informed me via text that he was finishing up a meeting and that he will be arriving very soon." It was clear from Amara's facial expression that she was skeptical, but she chose to keep her thoughts to herself. "Best wishes on your birthday, girl, and on your anniversary. Something truly stunning has been produced by you here. I am grateful to you." When Evelyn looked around the room, her pride momentarily overshadowed her concern for the situation. "The only thing that has to be done is for my spouse to finish the photo. Everything else is excellent." At the entryway, there was a bustle that caught their attention, as if they had been called. Even though Julian had come, Evelyn's relief swiftly turned into concern as soon as she saw him. In addition to his hair being untidy and his tie being crooked, there was a certain unsteadiness to his stride, which gave the impression that he had been drinking. He looked around each corner of the room until he saw Evelyn. In a loud voice, he proclaimed, "There she is," referring to the birthday girl and the anniversary wife. With none of the grace that he normally possesses, he approached Evelyn and planted a perfunctory kiss on her cheek that resounded like the roar of expensive bourbon. Evelyn whispered this to him as she reached out to adjust his tie. "You made it." In response to her contact, he jerked away. "Without a doubt, I triumphed. I wouldn't want to miss out on my own commemorative event, would I?" Evelyn's mind was filled with apprehension as she listened to his voice, since it had a certain edge to it. She stated that everyone was present, attempting to keep things as they were. "Not only did your mother make it in from Boston, but also your business partners from the firm, as well as my design clients." "What a wonderful thing," Julian responded in a resolute manner, taking a champagne flute and gulping it down in a single swallow. "Shall we begin the festivities? Is there not going to be a program, some kind of event for the evening?" Amara squeezed Evelyn's arm supportively before melting away, giving the couple space. Evelyn took a deep breath, pushing aside concerns. This was their night. "Dinner will be served soon," she stated. "I thought we might say a few words to our guests first." She would not allow Julian's mood to ruin the occasion. "We are grateful that they came. Just right. My mouth is full with things that I want to say." There was something about Julian's tone that caused Evelyn's skin to tingle with distress. Ahead of her having the opportunity to react, he was already making his way toward the little platform where the foursome was performing, indicating that they should pause. Following closely behind, Evelyn felt her heart pounding against her ribs. Not at all what was intended. Together, they were expected to talk about their first year of school and share their experiences of it. However, Julian had already taken possession of the microphone and examined its functionality by touching it twice. He started off by saying, "Good evening to everyone," and his voice reverberated across the suddenly quiet ballroom. "Thank you all for coming to this elaborate celebration." He gestured broadly at the decorations, something like disgust flickering across his features. Evelyn stood at the edge of the stage, transfixed. As Julian continued, "My wife went to tremendous efforts to honor our first anniversary." Exceptional was stressed by him in a manner that gave the impression that he was making an accusation. When it comes to making large gestures, appearances, and demonstrating to the world what a perfect couple we are, Evelyn has always been one for grand gestures. A muttering could be heard across the throng. In her face, Evelyn felt the blood drain away from her. She hushed, "Julian," as she moved closer to him and murmured his name. He ignored her and continued to concentrate on the visitors who were becoming increasingly uncomfortable. "What are you doing?" The truth is, there's nothing to celebrate tonight. Our marriage has been a mistake from the beginning. A business arrangement that outlived its usefulness." The entire room went into complete silence. While Evelyn was in a state of shock, she had a sensation similar to that of being submerged in icy water. As Julian proceeded, his tone became increasingly icy. "You see," he said, "I married Evelyn because she had connections in the design world that benefited my investment portfolio. She married me because she thought I could give her the status and security she so desperately craves," he said, and stared directly at Evelyn. His blue eyes were cold and lacked any hint of warmth. "However, I have come to the realization that this charade cannot be made to be worth continuing no matter how many lavish parties or how many desperate attempts there are to impress me." She was unable to take a breath. In spite of the fact that her vision became blurry and tears threatened to fall, she blinked them back with all her might, steadfastly refusing to cry in front of the shocked audience. As a result, Julian dug into the pocket of his blazer and pulled out an envelope in order to celebrate the anniversary of our company. "The thing that my wife truly deserves is what I am giving her." With an evil grin on his face, he extended the envelope in the direction of Evelyn. "Please, Evelyn, file for divorce. Imagine that you have been served." The envelope was dropped on the stage in the middle of them. It was impossible for Evelyn to fathom the severity of the humiliation that was taking place as she peered at it. Suddenly, the clutch bag that she was holding, which contained the watch that she had purchased with the property that belonged to her mother, felt like it was too heavy for her to bear. Julian asked, his voice becoming more subdued but still being amplified by the microphone, "Did you really think her watch would fix everything? Could you have possibly believed that I wouldn't find out about you selling the land that your mother gave to you? Which piece of land contains the tree where her ashes have been dispersed?" In a mocking gesture of sympathy, he shook his head. "How pitiful!" In the same vein as this marriage, the mere mention of her mother's ashes caused Evelyn to experience a profound emotional breakdown. Her tears, which she had been fighting off, finally came out. The necklace that belonged to her mother immediately burned on her skin. Whispers began to break out from the audience as the room began to revolve around her. There was a distressing blending of faces. She was shocked, and some people even found her public anguish amusing. Taking a step backward that was not steady, she came dangerously close to falling off the stage. "I recommend that everyone in the group enjoy the pricey supper." Julian came to the conclusion that once the microphone was replaced, my soon-to-be ex-wife had given it. "Please consider it her gift to each and every one of us." Without giving Evelyn another glance, he exited the stage and headed straight for the exit instead of continuing his journey. The only thing that could be heard after his departure was the sound of Evelyn's purse hitting the ground. The quiet that followed his departure was deafening. The black watch case fell out onto the polished wood as it was being removed. After she had reached the point where she could no longer retain her dignity, she went to her knees and let out a sob. Despite the fact that her shoulders were quivering with grief and humiliation, she covered her face with a stunning scarlet dress that pulled around her like wine that had been spilled. While Evelyn was in the midst of her breakdown, she had a hazy awareness of the activity that was occurring around her. The voice of Amara, a harsh one filled with protective rage. As further friends approached, they hesitated, unsure of how to proceed in the aftermath of the horrific event that they had witnessed. At that moment, she was taken aback when a kind hand caressed her shoulder. When she looked up, her vision was obscured by tears, and she encountered a face that she did not recognize. The tall man had broad shoulders and hazel eyes, and he was dressed nicely in a navy suit that had been well fitted. There was no sign of pity on his face. Rather, there was a quiet understanding that somehow managed to pierce through her humiliation. A spotless handkerchief was offered to him, and he inquired in a quiet voice, "May I?" Without uttering a single word, Evelyn received it and pressed the gentle fabric against her cheeks. The stranger squatted down next to her, providing her with some protection from the steps that were occupied by the mob. He introduced himself by saying, "My name is Marcus Thornton," and his voice was a deep, calming baritone. Marcus's hand remained steady on her shoulder, being an anchor in the storm. "What that man did was unconscionable," he continued, his calm tone belying the fire in his eyes. "I've never seen such unforgivable cruelty displayed so publicly. I've never seen it." Evelyn tried to speak, but another sob choked her words. Marcus's hand remained steady on her shoulder. "There is no one who deserves to be treated in such a manner, and certainly not someone who has obviously put their whole heart into doing this tonight. In some way, his comments were able to break through the barrier of Evelyn's shock. As she finally found her voice, she took a trembling breath and dragged it out. He said, "I just wanted to save our marriage," as her fingers reflexively reached for her mother's necklace. "I just wanted to save our marriage. I gave up all I had left of her." "Some things aren't meant to be saved," Marcus responded in response. "And there are some individuals who are not deserving of the salvation that is offered to them," he said as he reached down and picked up the watch case, gently closing it before handing it back to her at that moment. "Someone who would use your mother's memory as a weapon doesn't deserve any sacrifice," he stated in response. The appearance of a momentary flash of personal pain crossed his face before he regained his calm. They were able to pay attention to the commotion that was occurring at the entrance to the ballroom before Evelyn could answer. A furious expression appeared on Julian's face as he made his way toward the stage once he had returned. He yelled out to Evelyn, asking, "Are you still putting on a show?" Marcus stood up to his full height and positioned himself between Evelyn and her husband, who was coming. He asked, "Have you already found yourself a shoulder to cry on?" Marcus was accompanied by 2 male security personnel who appeared alongside him, maintaining a protective attitude. Marcus responded, "I believe you've said quite enough for one evening, Mr. Hayes," with a voice that was no longer soft but carried a steely edge that caused Julian to stop in his tracks from continuing his conversation. Julian glared at Marcus and demanded, "Who the hell do you think you are?" Marcus nodded in response. "Someone who recognizes a woman of value when he sees one," Marcus responded in a level-headed manner. A further step forward was taken by Julian, but the security guards moved in sync with him, obstructing his route. "Something you clearly failed to do." This was a very clear statement. He was not permitted to approach in any way. Julian cast a glance between the guards and then at Marcus, whose calm demeanor seemed to infuriate him even further. "Sir," one of the security men remarked in a forceful voice, "I suggest you leave the premises now before this situation escalates further." At long last, his attention was drawn to Evelyn, who was still kneeling on the platform. She was holding the handkerchief to her face with one hand, and the necklace that belonged to her mother with the other for support. He spewed out, "You are not worth even this." After delivering that final shot, he spun around and stormed out of the room, leaving behind an awkward quiet. "You never were." Marcus refocused his attention on Evelyn and extended his hand to assist her in standing up. Despite her initial reluctance, she eventually agreed to it and allowed him to help her stand up. He held her hand in a way that was both warm and firm, and it helped to stabilize her whenever she wavered slightly. She managed to say, "Thank you," despite the fact that she was facing a new wave of discomfort as she became fully aware of the audience that was still watching. "No need for thanks," Marcus responded. "I'm not grateful." He hadn't let go of her hand, and something in his countenance had changed, revealing a determination that had replaced the concern that he had before displayed. "Taking advantage of moments of clarity when they present themselves is something I believe in, Miss Carter and Evelyn. I am aware that this is not the conventional approach, and it may even be improper given the circumstances." Evelyn glanced at him, her grief suddenly being replaced by a momentary state of perplexity. "May I ask what you mean?" Marcus inhaled deeply at the same time that his gaze remained fixed on hers. "During this period, I have been keeping up with your design work. Your efforts to remodel the community center, as well as the manner in which you create settings that use beauty to promote healing. When I was supposed to meet with you for a professional purpose a month ago, circumstances prohibited us from doing so." In the midst of the audience that was watching, a murmur rose up. Evelyn experienced a rising temperature in her cheeks. "I had no idea where this unanticipated conversation was going to go either. What I'm trying to convey," Marcus continued, his voice becoming more assured, "is that a woman like you is deserving of adoration rather than ridicule. You deserve to be loved by someone who acknowledges your value and who would cherish rather than minimize the thoughtfulness you have shown other people." Marcus, who was still holding Evelyn's hand in his, lowered himself to one knee in front of her in a smooth movement that caused the eyes of those who were watching to gasp in surprise. With an attitude that was quite genuine, he stated, "If you were to give me the opportunity, I would be that man. Would you be so kind as to grant me the privilege of courting you in a manner that is appropriate with the purpose of being married, Evelyn Carter? I guarantee that you will never again experience the anguish of love that is not recognized." Whispers of shock could be heard around the ballroom. As Evelyn gazed down at the man who was kneeling in front of her, she was confident that she had fallen into some kind of weird dream that was the result of her mental suffering. Just a few minutes after her husband had publicly divorced her, this attractive stranger, Marcus Thornton, was making a marriage proposal to her. It was eventually possible for her to say, "You don't even know me," but her voice was hardly audible. The response that Marcus gave was, "I know enough," without holding back. "I know you have a wonderful heart, beautiful taste, and the strength to confront humiliation with grace. The rest I would spend a lifetime discovering if you would allow it." Chapter 2. The first proposal. 2 weeks after the catastrophic anniversary party, Evelyn sat alone in her modest design office. She was thinking about how she could propose to her husband. She had not accepted any new clients since that night, shifting her attention instead to existing projects that required minimal interaction with other people. The divorce papers remained unsigned on her coffee table at home. The morning light filtered through the gauzy curtains, illuminating the fabric samples and sketches that were scattered across her desk. Not because she harbored any hope of reconciliation with Julian, but because signing them felt like admitting defeat, like acknowledging that she had been foolish enough to sell her mother's land for a man who had likely never loved her at all. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Amara entered, carrying coffee and pastries, concern etched on her face. "You look like you actually slept last night," Amara said, setting the coffee on Evelyn's desk. "Almost 4 hours," Evelyn replied with a weak smile. "A new record." Amara perched on the edge of the desk, studying her friend. "Have you thought about calling him?" There was no need to specify which him she meant. Marcus Thornton's business card sat in the center of Evelyn's desk, its presence impossible to ignore. Since that night, she had conducted extensive research on him, the self-made real estate developer whose sustainable building projects had revolutionized affordable housing while making him a fortune. His philanthropic foundation provided scholarships to students from disadvantaged backgrounds. There were no scandals, no failed marriages, and nothing to suggest that he was anything other than the gentleman he appeared to be. "And what do you say?" "Thank you for your marriage proposal, but I'm still recovering from the public humiliation that was caused by my soon-to-be ex-husband," Evelyn said as she traced the embossed letters of his name. "You may begin by saying, 'Thank you for being the only decent man in the room that night,'" as Amara advised, beginning your sentence. Evelyn said, "That wasn't love," after she stopped for a moment before continuing, "Not everyone gets a second chance at love, Evelyn. That was, I don't know what that was. Pity, a savior complex. No one proposes to a stranger unless something's not right." Amara responded with a shrug. By the time she reached the door, she stood up and said, "Perhaps it's just that sometimes people just know. Just make a solemn vow to me that you will not discard the card." Evelyn was unable to continue concentrating after Amara had departed. When she was feeling the most useless, she couldn't stop thinking about Marcus's eyes and the way they had gazed at her with such clarity and conviction, as if he had actually seen her value. It was a text message from a number that she was not familiar with that rang her phone. "Tomorrow evening, the Metropolitan Museum will be conducting a charity gala for the purpose of promoting arts education. Due to the fact that you worked with their design committee the previous year, your name was included on the guest list. I am hoping that you will be there. Despite the fact that you may be feeling the most in the shadows, Marcus, the world deserves to see your brightness." There was an unexpected increase in Evelyn's heart rate as she glanced at the message. What was the source of her phone number? Why did he know about her participation in the museum committee? In spite of the fact that the inquiry ought to have caused her to feel concerned, she instead felt a flutter of something that she hadn't experienced in months. There is a glimmer of expectation, along with curiosity and interest. In every way, the gala was a spectacular occasion. The main hall of the museum was converted into an enchanted forest by means of sophisticated light installations that created the illusion of stars above. In spite of the fact that Evelyn had nearly succeeded in candling a dozen times, Amara's insistence and her own obstinate determination to prevent Julian from turning her into a recluse had taken precedence. Instead of wearing her customary bright colors, she opted to wear midnight blue because she wanted to blend in with the surroundings. Her exquisite collarbones and the graceful line of her neck were brought to the forefront by the basic column dress with its subtle silver beading down the neckline. This resulted in her receiving more attention than she had planned to receive. She was able to avoid most interaction for the first hour, with the exception of courteous welcomes, by situating herself close to a quiet alcove that featured sculptures from the Renaissance. It wasn't that she was hiding, rather, she was simply observing and building her strength. Do you agree that the Bernini is absolutely stunning? Evelyn felt a palpable shiver run down her spine as she heard the deep voice coming from behind her. Upon turning around, she discovered Marcus Thornton, dressed impeccably in a fitted tuxedo, talking about her rather than the sculpture. As Marcus continued to move to stand next to her, he continued to describe the way in which he managed to both portray vulnerability and strength. It makes me think of someone I ran into not so long ago. A voice was discovered by Evelyn. Dear Mr., are we going to act as if this is a coincidence? A. Thornton. This smile of his was genuine and welcoming. You, Marcus, please. No, this is not a coincidence at all. I had high hopes that you would show up. How did you locate my phone number? This was a direct question. Amara, it is your friend. In the beginning, she was protective, but she gradually came to the conclusion that I might be deserving of at least a text message. He looked at her face a lot. Are you experiencing anger? It was a question that Evelyn thought about. No, she responded in an honest manner. Simply be cautious. It is common for men who make huge gestures to vanish once they return to their normal lives. Marcus accepted the fact that the evaluation was fair and based on your experience. Nevertheless, I might make the case that guys who prioritize their appearance over their substance are not men at all. The champagne was served around by a waitress. When Marcus offered Evelyn one of the glasses, she reluctantly accepted it. Marcus then took 2 glasses. I should apologize, he added, his attitude becoming more serious each time he spoke. It was not because I didn't mean it, but rather because I didn't feel like it was fair to you at that particular moment in time that I made my proposal that night. There was a surge in temperature in Evelyn's cheeks. This came as a surprise. Marcus revealed that he had been following your work for more than a year. Your design for the community center, the manner in which you created settings that were reassuring without being condescending, and that healed through beauty without becoming ostentatious to individuals. It was my intention to meet you at the benefit that took place a month ago, but I had to travel abroad for work. It was then that Evelyn recalled the event, namely the vacant seat that was occupied at her table. With a nod, he asked, "That was you. When I saw you at your anniversary, I recognized you immediately. Then, watching how you faced unimaginable cruelty with such dignity," he said, his eyes filled with tremendous emotion. Under pressure, some people give in to their weaknesses, while others exhibit their genuine power. According to him, you were luminous in your pain, Evelyn. The unfiltered honesty in his voice caused her to catch her breath. She had never been seen in that manner before. Not in the capacity of a designer whose work they admire. Instead of being a wife whose appearance was a compliment to her husband, she was a woman whose spirit shone through even the most difficult times in her life. She stated that she was at a loss for words in response to that. You are not required to make any statements. In reference to the rooftop garden of the museum, Marcus made a motion. Would you be willing to accompany me on this walk? Up there, the city appears to be a lovely place. In spite of her better judgment, Evelyn gave a slight nod. Marcus welcomed other people with genuine warmth as they went through the crowd, but he maintained a respectful distance from her. He did not touch her elbow or place his hand on her back, as Julian may have done in order to claim ownership of the situation. A smaller number of guests braved the chilly nighttime air to enter the garden, which was now more peaceful. There were lights that were twinkling through the trees that were in pots, and the city was spread out in front of them like a tapestry of light and darkness. Marcus spoke softly as they stood at the parapet, moving from one residence to the next. I grew up in foster care, he described his childhood. A lack of complete belonging. I became able to identify people with true spirits. In my universe, they were extremely uncommon and valuable. Evelyn glanced to him, taken aback by the information that was so personal to her. In addition, he stated, when I was 16 years old, I came across an architect who recognized something in me that no one else had bothered to notice. He guided me, assisted me in applying to colleges, and demonstrated to me how to simultaneously transform spaces and lives. Evelyn asked Marcus, "Is that what you were doing that night, recognizing value?" Marcus responded with a simple yes, and then he turned to face her in full. "Evelyn, I won't pretend that my reaction to you was purely intellectual admiration, he said. His gaze was distant, as he reflected on the fact that he had taught me that recognizing value in others is more than just doing something kind. There was something else, something I've never experienced before. From an inside pocket, he withdrew a small box. Evelyn's heart lurched, thinking wildly that he might be producing a ring. But when he opened it, she saw a delicate silver compass on a chain. "My first real proposal," Marcus said softly, not offered in the heat of the moment, but with clear intention. The compass was held up by him as he spoke. "When I was a child and I was lost, the only thing that was consistent was knowing that north would always be north." He extended the box toward her and said, "I'm not asking for marriage tonight. I'm asking for a chance to show you that not all men are like Julian." He continued, "Even when I couldn't see the stars, even when everything else changed, that remained true. That love can be a compass, not a cage. That you deserve someone who sees your true worth and values it above all else." Evelyn looked from the compass to Marcus's face, her heart racing. "I barely know you," she whispered. "Then know this," he said. "I will never rush you. I will never shame you. I will never make you feel less than the extraordinary woman you are." The sincerity that he displayed in his eyes caused Evelyn's carefully formed barriers to buckle. His voice became more kind, and he said, "If all you can offer is friendship, I will treasure that gift and never demand more." Although she hesitated for a few moments, she eventually went for the compass, and as she removed it from the box, her fingertips came close to touching his. "It's beautiful," she added in an undeniable manner. Marcus responded, like its owner, to the question. A grin appeared on his face as she abruptly looked up. In spite of herself, Evelyn let out a genuine chuckle, which was the first time she had laughed since that dreadful night. Too much. Unquestionably, not enough. His smile in response was really amazing. "I'm going to focus on improving my delivery." Evelyn felt his warmth like a shield against the cool night air as he moved behind her to fasten the necklace. He took the necklace and moved into position behind her. The weight of the compass was new but not unwanted as it pressed against her skin during the process. She turned back to face him and muttered, "Thank you," as she did so. "This is not only for this, but also for that evening, for coming to visit me." There was a change in Marcus's expression. "My dear Evelyn Carter, it would be a privilege for me to have you join me for dinner the following week." "Is it just dinner?" "Conversation only, please. In the right way to start." At her throat, Evelyn reached out and felt the compass, perceiving the unfolding of something delicate within her chest. "It is not love, not yet, but it may be the forerunner of love. I have hope." Simply put, she answered yes. "That would be nice." The third chapter. It had been 3 weeks since the museum gala, when Marcus had presented Evelyn with the compass necklace. 3 weeks had gone since the rescue. Following that evening, Evelyn had reluctantly agreed to a true first date, which consisted of a quiet meal at a French restaurant that was small and personal. Marcus had impressed her with his knowledge of architecture and his genuine interest in her design philosophy. Despite her anticipation of awkwardness, she was pleasantly surprised to discover that she was at ease in his presence. Their second encounter took place in the afternoon at a local art exhibition. Marcus had said that he was completely ignorant about modern art, displaying a weakness that drew him to her. A self-deprecating smirk appeared on his face as he said, "I am capable of designing buildings, but I am unable to interpret a canvas of colored squares." More than any other spectacular gesture, that simple admission of imperfection had been the most effective way to earn her trust. She had been shown yet another facet of him during their third encounter, which took place on a Sunday morning when they were strolling around the botanical gardens. He was familiar with the Latin names of various plants. A hobby that he had taken up from a foster mother who had been a botanist and the only person who genuinely cared, he had recounted in a hushed manner, pausing before disclosing tiny views of foster homes, where affection was, at best, conditional and, at worst, non-existent. Now, following their fourth encounter, he had prepared a private supper for her in his penthouse, where he had also prepared the meal personally. Evelyn found herself analyzing the patient and meticulous manner in which Marcus was courting her, despite the fact that he had burned the first batch of dinner rolls. This was rather amazing. Marcus appeared to be willing to construct a foundation stone by stone, showing care for her heart that was still in the process of healing, in contrast to Julian's whirlwind of attention and flattery. Evelyn had stayed late at her studio tonight in order to complete the plans for a project that was being done for a community center. Underneath her blouse, the compass necklace that he had presented to her was resting down against her skin. She wore it every day, but she was unable to articulate the reason why she did so. As a result of the fact that it symbolized something that she urgently required, such as direction, certainty, and the assurance that even in the midst of darkness, there was a way forward. While she was locking the door to the studio, the night air had a lovely crispness to it. The offer of a ride home had been made by Amara, but Evelyn had declined it. By going for a walk, she would be able to cleanse her mind of the muddled emotions that she experienced every time she thought of Marcus. The patience he showed her was both reassuring and unsettling. Do you think she was putting too much stock in his cautious approach? Was his restraint done out of respect, or was it just a matter of polite interest? While she was preoccupied with these thoughts, she was 3 blocks away from her apartment when she became aware of someone following her rather than hearing them. As Evelyn sped up her pace, she pressed her portfolio more tightly against her chest, and her heart began to beat faster. She started running as she heard heavy footsteps coming from immediately behind her, but she was unable to avoid colliding with a solid figure that emerged from between 2 parked automobiles to make contact with her. The man's face was unfamiliar, but his tone made it plain that he was going somewhere. "Mrs. Hayes, are you going somewhere?" Certainly, this was not a chance meeting. Otherwise, is it once more Miss Carter? It is difficult to keep track of everything. In the moment when Evelyn took a step back, she discovered that she was caught in the middle between the first man and the second man who had come from the shadows. A demand was made by her. "What do you want?" Even though his smile was anything but welcoming, the second man said that it was just a nice talk. "Regarding the assets that you are claiming in the divorce proceedings. To Mr. Hayes is of the opinion that you should reevaluate your viewpoint." Anger grew out of fear as it progressed. "To intimidate me, he dispatched you. Even for Julian, that is a low score." With a shrug, the first man said, "He is a successful businessman. All of this is a negotiation." Taking Evelyn's wrist in his grasp, he extended his hand. "We should have this conversation in a more private setting." Evelyn abruptly retreated, causing her portfolio to fall to the ground. Her designs dispersed across the pavement as the evening breeze blew. "I want you to stop touching me." A second man moved closer to the first. "Please don't make this more difficult for yourself, lady. It is only a message that we are giving. It's possible that tomorrow will be even more difficult than tonight." The threat lingered in the atmosphere, and it caused Evelyn's blood to turn ice cold. When everyone's attention was suddenly drawn to the abrupt squeal of tires, she opened her mouth to scream. After a sleek black sedan veered to the curb, Marcus Thornton exited from the vehicle, his eyes, which were normally kind, suddenly appearing as hard as flint. "I believe the lady asked you to step back," he continued, his voice eerily quiet to the point of being lethal. It was obvious that the men were considering this unanticipated obstacle as they exchanged glances. The first thug stated, "This is a private matter," and he meant it. Marcus's laugh wasn't funny, and he said, "Move along." "Evelyn, are these men bothering you?" "They work for Julian," she successfully responded. She felt a wave of relief rush over her when Marcus suddenly appeared before her. Marcus was suddenly confronted with a potentially harmful situation. "Gentlemen, I suggest that you leave now." Evelyn had a fleeting glimmer of hope that they would comply with her request. After that, the first man went under his jacket and drew out a knife, the gleam of metal catching the light from the street where he was standing. The affluent youngster, he scoffed, wanted to play the role of the hero. Marcus moved with amazing ease, evading the knife hand and delivering a precise hit that sent the attacker falling backward. Bad choice. What happened next unfolded with shocking speed. The man surged forward, but Marcus moved with unusual quickness. Marcus responded by spinning around and used the momentum of the second man to push him off balance. The second man had assaulted him from behind. Marcus battled with the controlled accuracy of someone who had professional training, and Evelyn stared in startled quiet as he did so. Marcus was able to redirect the knife as the initial assailant came at him again. Nonetheless, the blade still managed to cut across his shoulder and rip through his suit jacket. Marcus unleashed a powerful combination that left both participants groaning on the ground, despite the fact that he had sustained an injury. "Evelyn, Marcus uttered in a hurried word. "My car now!" she yelled without hesitation as she hurried to the vehicle as Marcus gathered her scattered designs with his arm that was not involved in the injury. After he had entered the building, he handed her the portfolio and then started the motor before driving away at a calm and steady pace. His tone was tense as he inquired, "Are you hurt?" Evelyn responded, "No, I'm fine, but you're bleeding," as she stared at the dark stain that was spreading across his shoulder during the conversation. With a strong tone, Marcus responded, "There are no hospitals. We need to get you to a hospital." In spite of her fear, Evelyn shook her head and said, "There are too many questions. My penthouse isn't far away. I have supplies there." She had no need for police reports, which could potentially provide Julian with additional ammunition in the increasingly contentious divorce proceedings that they were going through. The sleek high-rise that overlooked the river was home to Marcus's penthouse, which was located on the very top floor. If the circumstances had been different, Evelyn would have loved the clear architectural lines and the clever design features. Instead, she hurriedly followed him to the restroom, where he shook himself out of his damaged jacket and shirt while making a grimace of anguish. "First aid kit under the sink," he directed, sitting on the edge of the marble tub. Evelyn found it surprisingly comprehensive and turned to find Marcus bare-chested before her. Despite the circumstances, she couldn't help noticing his athletic build, the defined muscles of his chest and abdomen. The smooth brown skin now marred by a 6 inch gash across his right shoulder. Marcus remained perfectly still, his only reaction being a slight tightening around his eyes when she applied antiseptic. "It looks worse than it is," he assured her, seeing her expression. "Surface wound, but it needs cleaning." Evelyn began gently cleaning away the blood with trembling hands, and she began carefully cleaning away the blood. "How did you come across me?" "I was coming to your studio to surprise you," he acknowledged. "Saw you leaving," she inquired, concentrating on her task rather than their exceptional physical contact. "I was coming to your studio to surprise you. I figured I'd get caught up. Then I became aware of those men who were following you." The hands of Evelyn became still. "You've been training, as evidenced by the way you fought." The face of Marcus was obscured by a shadow. Not all foster care facilities were located in the most desirable areas. "I was taught to defend myself at a young age. Afterwards, I pursued a more formal education in martial arts." He paused for a moment before adding in a more subdued tone, "When I received this, I was 17 years old." A tiny scar that ran along his ribs was visible when he tilted his head slightly. In the previous foster family, the father was a chronic alcoholic who had a short fuse. One evening, he went for his daughter, who was 8 years old. "I stepped in to help." The revelation, which was given in a matter-of-fact manner but included a great deal of unspoken anguish, caused Evelyn's heart to tighten. This sight of Marcus' vulnerability, which was presented without him displaying any self-pity or dramatics, had a profound effect on her. She returned to her delicate ministrations and said in a calm voice, "What in the world happened to the girl?" "My mentor, the architect who later assisted me in getting into college, took her in. She is now a pediatrician," he said with a little smile that seemed genuine. His features softened even further. The dinners continue to take place once a month. In silence, Evelyn finished treating the wound, taking in this new facet of the guy who was standing in front of her. In a moment of chivalrous impulse, Marcus had proposed marriage to his girlfriend. However, Marcus was more than simply a powerful businessman. Before he met her, he had been someone who had safeguarded others and understood the suffering that others were experiencing. A bandage was being applied, and she mumbled, "Thank you," as she did so. Marcus seizes her hand and interrupts her in the middle of her ministrations, saying, "Not just for tonight, but for telling me about your past." When she raised her eyes to his, she noticed that they were filled with a great deal of emotion. "Evelyn, look at me." He said that, "I will never allow anyone to hurt you," and each word he spoke was replete with conviction. "But I need you to know something. I'm not perfect. I have scars, both visible and hidden. I have a temper I keep carefully controlled. I sometimes work too much and sleep too little." The forthright statement surprised her to her core. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I don't want you to see me as some fairy tale rescuer," he responded with genuine concern. "The only way for there to ever be something genuine between us is for it to be between two imperfect actual people, and not between a savior and a damsel. Suddenly, Evelyn became aware of how close they were to one another and glanced at him. Her position was between his knees, his chest was exposed in front of her, and her hands were still entangled in his. What moved her more than any huge romantic gesture could have was the sincerity that he displayed in his eyes. Before he consciously let go of her hand and leaned back slightly, Marcus took a strained breath and quickly looked at her lips. He then leaned back slightly. He continued, "You should finish with that bandage," with a gruff voice that conveyed the emotion that he was trying to suppress. Evelyn nodded, indicating that she now understood what had just taken place. "Then I'll take you home." Despite the fact that he had a strong desire to kiss her, he had made the decision to show respect for her heart, which was still in the process of healing, rather than taking advantage of the moment's vulnerability. Over the course of carefully applying the bandage on his shoulder, Evelyn experienced a change in her own internal state. Marcus Thornton had not only fought for her physical safety today, but he was also battling just as hard to safeguard her mental well-being, even against his own needs. He had fought for her physical safety before. Her fingers continued to get entangled in the bandage after she had done. The question was posed in a low voice, "What if I don't want to go home just yet?" In a searchful manner, Marcus's eyes met hers. "Evelyn, I don't want you to feel obligated because I helped you tonight." "It's not obligation," she assured him, reaching up to touch the compass that hung beneath her blouse. "It's choice, my decision." Slowly, deliberately, she drew forward and pressed her lips to his in a soft kiss. Marcus remained perfectly still for a heartbeat, then responded with exquisite tenderness, his hand coming up to cradle her face as though she were made of the most precious porcelain. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you," he confessed. "Even when I was a mess of tears and smeared makeup," she asked with a small, unexpected smile. "Especially then," he replied seriously, "because even in your most broken moment, your spirit shone through." Evelyn drew back slightly, studying his face, the sincerity in his eyes, the careful restraint in his touch. This man was nothing like Julian, whose charm had concealed calculation. Marcus's strength was tempered with gentleness, and his confidence was tempered with humility. "I'm not ready for everything," she admitted quietly. "I'm still sorting through the ruins of one relationship, but I'd like to see where this path leads." Marcus smiled, and for a moment, she caught a glimpse of the boy he must have been before life taught him to be cautious. He was open, hopeful, and unguarded. "I'm not asking for everything tonight," he assured her. "Just the chance to walk beside you wherever the path goes." "I'd like that," Evelyn whispered, her hand finding his again. "I'm beginning to think," she added softly, "that sometimes the compass points exactly where you need to go." Chapter 4. The partnership. Evelyn traced her fingers over the embossed letterhead of the legal document, hardly believing what she was reading. "That's the third one this month," she murmured, sliding the letter into a growing file of similar rejections. Her most recent client, a prestigious hospitality group that was planning a boutique hotel, had abruptly terminated her contract. The carefully worded letter was the only thing that could hide the truth. Julian's influence had poisoned another professional relationship. Each project that she lost felt like Julian reaching from the past to strangle her future. Her phone rang with a message from Marcus, saying, "Lunch today. I miss your smile." Her eyes welled up with tears of frustration. Her design business was more than just a means of subsistence. It was also her personal renaissance after years of diminishment in her marriage. Marcus had become her sanctuary in the midst of a storm that Julian had created. Another cancelled contract. She responded that she was not feeling very smiley today. Despite her frustration, warmth blossomed in her chest. Their relationship had developed naturally since that first kiss in his penthouse 2 weeks ago. Nothing had been rushed or forced, just a steady deepening of connection. Marcus' office was located on the top floor of a sleek glass tower in the downtown area. In contrast to Julian's executive suite, which was designed to intimidate with its chrome and leather accents, Marcus' space featured warm woods, living plants, and floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the room with natural light. His response came immediately. "My office. 10 a.m. Bring your portfolio. I have something to show you." Before leading her to a conference table where blueprints were laid out, he greeted her with a delicate kiss and gently entangled his fingers with hers. One of the walls featured architectural models of his sustainable home schemes. "What's this?" he asked. Evelyn inquired while she was looking over the blueprints. "My most recent endeavor," Marcus responded, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "A development with a variety of uses located in the Riverside district. Affordable housing, community spaces, retail, and a cultural center." Evelyn reviewed the drawings with professional attention, immediately noting the inventive use of space and sustainable components typical of Marcus' work. "It's wonderful. The integration of green spaces is particularly outstanding. He corrected your design vision alongside my architectural framework, remarking that it is lacking something. Soul, warmth, the human element that transforms architecture into home." He paused. "Your element, Evelyn." She looked up, suddenly understanding. "Are you offering me a job? A partnership?" "He corrected your design vision alongside my architectural framework. Equal collaboration separate from our personal relationship." Evelyn walked to the window, absorbing the implications. "People will talk. They'll say, I'm only getting this opportunity because we're involved." Marcus joined her, careful not to crowd her space. "Let them talk. The work will speak for itself." His voice softened. "Besides, I've wanted to collaborate with you professionally since before I knew you personally. Your design for the community center sold me on your talent long before I ever saw your face." Evelyn turned to him, studying his expression. "And if things between us change, the contract is structured to protect your professional interests, regardless of our personal relationship." He took her hand. "Evelyn, I would never use your heart to control your career. That's what Julian is doing right now, using your career to punish your heart." The truth of his words struck her deeply. Julian was weaponizing her professional reputation because he knew how much it meant to her. In contrast, Marcus was offering a path forward that recognized her talents independent of their growing feelings. "I'd like to see the full proposal," she said finally. "And I'll need my lawyer to review any contracts." Marcus' smile was radiant. "Of course, I'd expect nothing less." As they bent over the blueprints together, discussing possibilities, Evelyn felt something she hadn't experienced since Julian's betrayal: professional hope. Her mind raced with ideas for humanizing the spaces, making them both beautiful and functional for the families who would live there. "This courtyard could become a community garden," she suggested, pointing to an open area, "and these common spaces need to encourage interaction while still respecting privacy." Marcus watched her come alive, her hands moving expressively as she sketched concepts on tracing paper laid over his blueprints. This was the woman he'd glimpsed professionally from afar, confident, passionate, visionary. "You're extraordinary when you create," he said softly. Evelyn looked up, caught by the admiration in his eyes. Unlike Julian, who had viewed her design career as a useful networking tool, Marcus genuinely valued her creative mind. Their lunch forgotten, they spent hours brainstorming. When Evelyn finally checked the time, she was shocked to discover it was nearly evening. "I had no idea it was so late," she said as she gathered her belongings. "Time disappears when you're building dreams," Marcus responded, assisting her in organizing the designs that she had done. "Would you be interested in having dinner with me and eating with me?" Her phone rang before she could respond to the message, which said, "There is a small Ethiopian place nearby that I think you would love." Her attorney's number was glowing on the screen, and she responded with an apology to Marcus. "Miss Carter, I've just received notice that your ex-husband is filing a claim for the watch you purchased prior to your separation," she said on the phone. "His attorney is arguing it constitutes a marital asset due to its significant value." Evelyn's hand tightened around the phone. The sapphire watched the symbol of her greatest sacrifice, and Julian's Krillist rejection was now being used as another weapon against her. "That's absurd," she replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I purchased it with funds from property I inherited before our marriage. Unfortunately, the timing of the purchase falls within the marital period. We can fight this, but prepare yourself for a battle." After ending the call, Evelyn looked up to find Marcus watching her with concern. "Julian," he asked quietly. "He's claiming the watch as a marital asset." The absurdity suddenly struck her, and a sound between a laugh and a sob escaped her throat. "The watch he publicly rejected. The watch I bought by selling my mother's land." Marcus's expression darkened. "He doesn't want the watch." He wants to hurt you by taking something meaningful. It's not even about the watch itself anymore, Evelyn admitted, sinking into a chair. It's what it represents. My willingness to sacrifice something precious for a man who never deserved it. In 3 strides, Marcus was kneeling before her chair, taking both of her hands in his. Listen to me. Loving deeply is never foolish, even when the recipient proves to be unworthy. Your capacity for devotion is a strength, not a weakness. She looked up at Marcus, her eyes revealing that she was struggling to contain her feelings of helplessness. After a moment of hesitation, he continued in a low voice, I realized the significance of that watch the moment I saw it fall out of your purse early that evening. I am aware of the effects it had on you, not only financially but also emotionally. Evelyn noticed that her fingers were entwined with his more robust fingers as she observed their hands clasped together. I'm terrified, she admitted to herself. That is not of Julian, but more of regaining faith in my own judgment. She was taken aback when she saw Marcus' eyes exhibit an unexpected level of tenderness. The question was posed in a low voice, Do you think I'm never afraid? She was taken aback by the statement, which stated, I am terrified of failing you, of not being worthy of the trust you are slowly giving me. Despite the fact that he appeared to be so self-assured and capable in every circumstance, this great man was communicating his own uncertainties. It was possibly the most personal moment that they had ever shared with one another. It was more revealing than their kiss, and it was more significant than their working relationship. What is the reason behind your fear? She inquired about it. Marcus responded in a straightforward manner, softly gripping her hands, Because I've never had this before. I was able to achieve success by constructing things, Evelyn. The relationships, on the other hand, are more difficult to get correctly. When I was a child, I learned how simple it is to withhold affection from someone. My adult life did not provide me with many opportunity to engage with others on a true level. Through a gentle kiss, he brought her hands up to his lips and kissed them. Trust is not something that is bestowed all at once. It is constructed moment by moment, one deed at a time. His gaze was fixed on hers. I am not requesting unquestioning faith. Every day that goes by, Evelyn has the opportunity to earn your trust and regain your confidence. Evelyn sensed something fundamental in Marcus' honesty at that very moment, as the city lights began to glitter against the evening sky. It was not weakness that she recognized. Rather, it was the guts to be vulnerable with her. He was not offering to save her. Rather, he was offering to grow alongside her, putting his own heart at risk in the process. Ethiopian food sounds perfect, she replied, suddenly breaking through the veils of her prior moods with a genuine smile. As for your partnership proposition, I will take it into consideration, both the professional one and the one that she signaled between the two of them. Regardless of what this is turning out to be, Marcus's response smile was warm and comforting as he assisted her in standing up. This, he murmured as he gently brushed his lips against her lips, is the basis for something that is truly remarkable. And just like all of my other structures, I plan to make it sturdy enough to weather any storm that may come its way. As they made their way toward the elevators together, Evelyn saw that a new sense of equilibrium was developing between the two of them. Marcus's openness to expose his own worries had closed the final gap in her barriers, allowing her to see him not as a perfect savior but rather as a guy giving genuine collaboration in every sense of the word. This allowed her to see this man as a potential partner. She said, "You know," while they waited for the elevator to arrive. The deeper meaning that Marcus saw behind her remarks was revealed when he glanced down at her and said, "I think my favorite part of designing spaces is finding the right balance between strength and comfort, between beauty and function." According to him, the best designs usually manage to keep those tensions in perfect equilibrium. He agreed with this statement as his arms automatically slipped around her waist, much like relationships. A gentle chime signaled the arrival of the elevator, which quickly opened to display their reflection in the mirrored interior of the vehicle. Despite the fact that neither of the two individuals is leaning on the other, it is obvious that they are connected by something that is more powerful than proximity. Evelyn whispered, "I believe that we might be able to create something beautiful if we work together." When they entered the building, Marcus' eyes met hers in the mirror as they looked back. Every single way. He made a promise in every single way. The 5th chapter, number 3, is the charm. After working together professionally for a period of 4 months, the Riverside Development Project had progressed from the stage of plans to the stage of actual operation. The common vision that Marcus and Evelyn had for the building was brought to life by construction personnel that worked diligently. There were flats that were environmentally friendly and had a soul, common areas that encouraged interaction while still preserving privacy, and inventive design aspects that made luxury accessible to people with limited financial resources. In tandem with the development of the project, their personal relationship had also progressed, becoming more profound and robust while remaining cautious. Since that impulsive first night, Marcus had not expressed any interest in getting married. Nonetheless, Evelyn had occasionally caught him looking her with such fondness that it caused her to catch her breath. The recollection of his two propositions continued to hover between them. The initial one was the result of a protective impulse, while the second one was a more considered offering of a compass to direct her emotions. This evening, they were seen standing together on the rooftop garden of the central building of the development, which was just partially finished. The patio was illuminated by the golden light of the setting sun, which illuminated the plants that Evelyn had chosen to flourish in this urban atmosphere. Marcus remarked, "It is going to be beautiful," as he and his partner observed the progress that had been made. His arms instinctively made their way around her waist. "The locals will adore being able to view the sunset from this vantage point." Evelyn leaned in close to him, placing her head on his shoulder as she did all of this. A broken part of her had been repaired throughout the course of these previous few months. Her artistic self-assurance had been rediscovered as a result of her collaboration with Marcus. Despite the fact that Julian continued his insignificant efforts to destroy her professional standing, Marcus began by turning to face her and saying, "I've been thinking about the celebration held for the grand opening." As Evelyn responded, she was intrigued by his thoughtful look and informed him that the development would not be ready for at least another 2 months. "Exactly the same. There is just enough time to make plans for something truly remarkable." His hands were taken in hers by him. "Not only do I want this opening to be important for the project, but I also want it to be significant for us and for everything that we have created together in every way." At the same time, Evelyn observed the minor strain that was present in his shoulders, the deliberate manner in which he was selecting his words. Marcus Thornton asked with a smirk tugging at his lips, "What are you planning, Marcus Thornton?" "You'll have to wait and see, but I hope you'll trust me enough to let me surprise you." Her phone rang before she could exert any further pressure on him. "I hope you'll let me surprise you." As soon as she saw the number of her attorney, she promptly responded. "The court case concerning the sapphire watch has been going on for a considerable amount of time. A strategy that Julian employs on purpose in order to strip her of her resources and attention." The attorney for Miss Carter started off by saying, "We have received a settlement offer. If you are willing to give up your claim on the watch, Mr. Hayes is willing to do so in exchange for your portion of the property on Lincoln Avenue." Evelyn's stomach sank to the floor. The Lincoln Avenue building was their first joint venture, and it was a modest commercial property that saw significant appreciation in value over the course of their time together. There would be more than enough money for her to cover the price of the watch, which would mean that she would have to pay twice for a present. In the end, Julian failed. In an angry tone, she stated that he is completely aware of what he is doing, forcing me to make a choice between my financial stability and my principal. Following the conclusion of the call, she proceeded to describe the issue to Marcus, whose face became more serious. By asking, "What will you do?" he was careful not to impose his viewpoint on the situation. Evelyn looked out at the skyline of the city outside. "A portion of me desires to fight only on the basis of principle, while another portion of me simply desires to have this link to him severed at any cost." After taking a few steps closer, Marcus gently tipped her chin upward with his fingers until their eyes met. "I will support you in whatever decision you make. Please keep this in mind. Objects only possess the force that we bestow onto them." His statements resounded with a clarity that was surprising. All of these items, including the watch, her mother's land, and the property on Lincoln Avenue, were merely things. Finding a way to liberate oneself from Julian's emotional manipulation was the most important thing. "I'm going to accept the settlement," she made the decision. "Not because he has won, but because I refuse to let him occupy any more space in my life," Marcus said with a smile that was full with pride of his accomplishment. During the time that twilight was falling over the city, they were walking around the perimeter of the rooftop garden and discussing their ideas for the celebration of the grand opening. "That's my brave Evelyn." In spite of the fact that she was curious about Marcus' astonishment, Evelyn discovered that she was completely present in this moment of collaborative achievement. expressing gratitude for the trip that had led them to this location. A frenzy of activities characterized the subsequent 8 weeks of time. Because Marcus was inexplicably preoccupied with what he would only describe as preparations, Evelyn saw him very infrequently outside of the meetings that were held for the project. In spite of the fact that it was financially painful, the emotional freedom that resulted from the settlement with Julian was well worth making the sacrifice. The evening of the big opening arrived on a beautiful early fall evening, ideal for the occasion. Horizon Haven, which was a development that was completed with a spectacular appearance, was a subtle homage to the concept of rebirth from ashes. There was a warm lighting that illuminated the creative architecture, and Evelyn's interior design components created rooms that felt both smart and hospitable at the same time. Amara remarked, "You look absolutely stunning," as she assisted Evelyn in putting the last touches on her preparations in a private room that had been reserved for the two of them. Using her fingers, Evelyn smoothed the silk of her gown, which was a rich sapphire color that was a wonderful match for her complexion. "I've gone through the process of presenting designs to customers before, and I have no idea why I'm so anxious. Perhaps because this one is more significant," Amara remarked as she adjusted the compass necklace that Evelyn continued to wear on a daily basis instead of only for her professional life. Before Evelyn could react, there was a soft knock at the door. A young woman entered holding a little package that was tied with a silver ribbon. "The box was addressed to Miss Carter, and Mr. Thornton asked me to deliver it to you before you joined the company." While Evelyn was once again by herself, she carefully opened the box to discover a note that had been folded and placed on top of the tissue paper. The note was written in Marcus's elegant handwriting. The note read, "Evelyn, tonight we celebrate not just a building that has risen from empty space, but a woman who has risen from heartbreak, stronger and more beautiful than she was before. Before you join me, I ask you to take your time and follow the path that was marked with silver ribbons." As Evelyn left the preparation room, she discovered a silver ribbon tied to the doorknob outside. Following the ribbon led her down a corridor where photographs lined the walls, documenting the progress of the project. However, interspersed among the photographs were other photographs. Marcus, each and every one of these stops has a significance. During a site visit, Evelyn was seen laughing and standing proudly next to Marcus as the first walls were constructed. The ribbon path continued to the central courtyard, which had been transformed into an art installation. In the middle of the courtyard was a sculptural piece that caused Evelyn's breath to catch. It was a giant compass rose that was inlaid in stone, and it had pathways that led in 8 different directions. Each path featured moments from their journey together, architectural models, fabric swatches from her designs, even a small display containing the bloodied handkerchief Marcus had offered her on that first terrible night. Their story rendered in art and memory. At the northern point of the compass stood Marcus, resplendent in a tailored suit, his eyes finding hers immediately across the space. Marcus took both of her hands in his expression more open and vulnerable than she had ever seen it before. "Evelyn Carter," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion that was behind it. As she approached, she realized that the courtyard was not empty as she had initially thought it would be. Guests lined the periphery, watching silently as she walked the path toward him. There were guests. "This third time," Marcus continued, "I asked with the certainty that comes from building something real together. I had asked for your hand twice before, each time understanding that you weren't ready. The first time, it was out of a moment of protective instinct, and the second time, it was as a promise of patient devotion." Evelyn's heart began to race as she realized what was happening. A small box was removed from his jacket pocket by him as he released one of her hands. "You once sacrificed your heritage for a man who couldn't recognize its value," he said softly. He gestured to the installation that was surrounding them. "This compass rose represents our journey. It represents how we found direction together when both of our lives were in chaos. I can never replace what was lost, but I offer instead a future built on mutual respect and profound love." Kneeling before her, Marcus opened the box to reveal not a traditional diamond ring, but a band of warm gold inset with a small piece of polished wood. "This ring contains wood from the land your mother left you," he explained, his voice rough with emotion. With tears welling up in her eyes, Evelyn exclaimed, "I tracked down the developer who purchased it and asked for this small piece of the willow tree that stood there." "How did you know about the tree?" she inquired. "When you were younger, you and your mother would have picnics under it throughout the summer months. You mentioned this once." He responded by saying, "Some things are worth preserving even as we build new dreams." Marcus took her left hand and looked up at her with complete and utter conviction. "Evelyn Carter, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me as equal partners in work and in love? I promise to cherish your strength as much as your vulnerability, to support your independence while offering you my heart's complete devotion." In that moment, surrounded by the physical manifestation of all they had created together, Evelyn felt the final pieces of her heart's protective wall crumble. Marcus had not simply said he loved her. Throughout his deeds, both large and small, he had demonstrated his commitment to her in a consistent and unwavering manner. "Yes," she hushed, and then it became loud enough for everyone to hear. "Marcus, you are correct. The first one will marry you." As he put the ring onto her finger and stood up to take her in his arms, the guests who had come erupted in cheers. Their kiss was a promise of the life that they would make together, and it was both sensitive and passionate at the same time. In the later part of the celebration, when they were moving among their guests to celebrate the completion of the project as well as their engagement, Marcus kept Evelyn close to his side, and his eyes seldom left her face. While her fingers were touching the one-of-a-kind ring that had a feeling that was somehow more priceless than any diamond, she asked, "Was this your plan all along?" Marcus smiled in a way that was both romantic and triumphant as he asked, "To propose here tonight? As soon as you gave your consent to this collaboration, I had the hope that it would eventually result in a more long-term arrangement." He lightly kissed her on the temple with his lips. It is said that the third time is the charm. Finally at peace with both her past and her future, Evelyn leaned against him and expressed her satisfaction. In a low voice, she whispered that the compass had always pointed to you. I only required some time to develop faith in its course. The 6th chapter. We are starting over. Evelyn's closest friends were astounded by the dramatic change that has taken place in her life in the 2 months that have passed since she accepted Marcus' proposal. The lady who had previously crumpled under the weight of public humiliation now strode through the world with a quiet confidence, her hand regularly touching the wooden ring that marked both her past and her future. Amara made the statement, "I barely recognize you," during one of the afternoons that they were discussing the wedding plans in Evelyn's recently refurbished design studio, which was that area. Having been forced to relocate from her previous location as a result of Julian's vengeful activities, Marcus had assisted her in their acquisition. "I mean that in the most positive way that I can think of." Evelyn flashed a grin as she took a quick glance at the mood board that they had designed for the small ceremony that was scheduled to take place in the spring of the following year. She stated that there are times when she hardly recognizes herself. Not only Marcus is involved, although he plays a significant role in it. It is recollecting the person that I was always destined to be. Even after she had married Julian, Evelyn was still grieving the loss of her mother. She was looking for a sense of stability and validation in a relationship that did not deliver either of those things. The version of Evelyn who would eventually marry Marcus had first discovered her own strength, and then she had selected a mate who would amplify rather than reduce that strength. She received a message from Marcus on her phone, which rang. The gathering was over on time. At Bissett's, we had dinner. I have some news to share. When Amara saw Evelyn's face light up with excitement, she urged her to go. It's okay if the flowers wait. Bissett's was their preferred area to hang out. Their first genuine date, which took place after the museum gala, took place at a quaint French bistro. As Evelyn approached, the proprietor welcomed her by name and led her to the secret corner table where Marcus was waiting. Marcus's face lit up with excitement as he saw her approach. "Have I told you today how beautiful you are?" he questioned as he rose to his feet to give her a gentle kiss before taking her chair. Evelyn responded with a friendly smile, only twice, with a smile. On the other side of the table, Marcus stretched out and grabbed her hand, and his eyes sparkled with pleasure. Our application for the Design Scholarship Program was accepted by the Board of Directors of the Foundation. Starting next fall, 10 students from underserved communities will receive full funding for design and architecture education with guaranteed internships at either your studio or my firm. Evelyn squeezed his hand, emotion welling in her throat. The scholarship had been her idea, a way to create opportunities for talented young people who lacked the advantages of privilege. Marcus had immediately embraced the concept, expanding it beyond what she'd initially envisioned. "That's wonderful," she said. "Those students' lives will change completely like mine did when my mentor saw potential in me." Marcus replied, "It's our responsibility to extend that ladder to others." As they shared a bottle of wine and their favorite dishes, Evelyn marveled at how naturally they had merged their separate worlds. Marcus had introduced her to philanthropic circles where her design perspective brought fresh approaches to community projects. She had drawn him into more intimate, creative spaces, where his analytical mind found new applications. Together, they were greater than the sum of their parts. After dinner, they walked along the riverfront, Marcus' arm around her shoulders, protecting her from the crisp evening breeze. "I had a strange call today," he said, his tone carefully neutral from Julian's attorney. Evelyn tensed slightly. Despite the finalized divorce and settlement, Julian's shadow occasionally still darkened her life with petty manipulations. What did he want? Apparently, Julian's company is struggling. He's looking for investors. Marcus's expression remained impassive. Evelyn stopped walking and turned to face Marcus. "That is unbelievably presumptuous." "It's desperate," Marcus corrected gently. "His investors are pulling out after that expose on his business practices. The market recognizes a sinking ship. Because of my connection to Julian's ex-wife, his lawyer suggested that I might be interested in the relationship." Evelyn's chest was filled with a complicated emotion. It was not a great sense of satisfaction at Julian's difficulties, but it was perhaps validation that his true character was finally being revealed to others. "What did you tell them?" she asked. "That I make investment decisions based on sound business principles, not personal connections." Evelyn nodded, grateful that Marcus understood her complicated feelings about Julian without her having to explain them. "Let's not waste any more of our evening on him," Marcus smiled as he drew her closer to him. "I'd much rather discuss our plans for the weekend." Marcus' thumb traced circles on her hand, and he explained that his approach demonstrated exactly why his company is being unsuccessful. "My lake house is ready for visitors, and I'm thinking a private getaway before the holiday rush might be just what we need." The lake house was Marcus' sanctuary, a modernist retreat nestled in the woods 2 hours from the city. Evelyn had visited only once before during a summer thunderstorm that had trapped them indoors for 2 days. The memory of those rain-soaked hours explored in each other's arms brought heat to her cheeks. "I'd love that," she replied, her voice dropping to a more intimate register that made Marcus' eyes darken. His kiss was still respectful of their public setting, but carried a promise of passion to come. "Should we head home?" he murmured against her lips. Home. The word held new meaning now. 3 weeks ago, Evelyn had moved into Marcus' penthouse, though they maintained her apartment as a private studio space. The transition had been surprisingly seamless. Marcus had cleared half his closet before she arrived and encouraged her to rearrange furniture and add her own touches to the space. "Yes," she agreed, suddenly eager for the privacy that would allow her to show rather than tell him how deeply her love had grown. The lake house welcomed them with panoramic views of autumn foliage reflected in still waters. Marcus had arranged everything, including the kitchen being stocked with their favorite foods, the fireplace being prepared for lighting, and the bedroom being adorned with fresh flowers. Marcus opened a bottle of wine while Evelyn prepared a straightforward dinner. They moved around each other with the comfortable synchronicity of partners who had learned each other's rhythms. "I've been thinking," Evelyn said as they lingered over dessert, the fire casting warm light across the contemporary living space. They had returned from a walk along the shoreline, returning as the sky was painted in spectacular hues of orange and pink. Marcus's expression softened as he asked, "What about my birthday next year?" He was aware that the date still carried painful associations. Her birthday, which was shared with what would have been her second wedding anniversary with Julian, was now forever linked to public humiliation. "What about it?" he asked in a gentle manner. "I want to reclaim it, make new memories." She reached out for his hand and said, "I want us to get married on my birthday." Marcus's expression was one of surprise and pleasure. "Are you sure? We could choose any other date." "I'm sure," Evelyn said firmly. "I don't want that date to be associated with pain anymore. I wanted that date to represent our beginning, not my ending with Julian." "Evelyn Carter," he murmured against her hair as he drew her into his arms. "You continue to amaze me with your bravery," he said. She tilted her face up to his. "Is that a yes?" "It's 1,000 times yes," he replied before capturing her lips in a kiss that quickly deepened from tender to hungry. Marcus rose from his chair and pulled her into his arms with sudden fierceness. In contrast to her physical relationship with Julian, which had become stale and one-sided toward the end, Evelyn's intimacy with Marcus was a continuing revelation. with each encounter being both passionate and profoundly connecting. She pressed closer to him, her body responding to the now familiar yet still exhilarating feel of him working against her. His hand moved down her back, pressing her hips into his. "Bedroom," he offered, his voice harsh with need. Evelyn grinned, her fingers already working at the buttons of his shirt. "It's too far," she muttered, guiding him toward the soft rug that was placed in front of the fireplace. Marcus let out a gentle chuckle as he silently followed her example with voluntary abandon. Another facet of their connection that was so drastically different from her previous experiences was the perfect balance of giving and receiving, leading and following, with both parties always being alert to the pleasure of the other. After that, Evelyn leaned her head against Marcus's chest and listened to the rhythmic beating of his heart while she was enveloped in a gentle throw in front of the coals that were dying. With his fingers sluggishly moving over her spine, he inquired, "Are you happy?" Her response was honest, and she said, "Completely." And after a moment's hesitation, "I never thought I'd feel this way again. After that night, I was certain something inside me had died forever." Marcus turned around to see your expression on his face. His facial expression was solemn. His remark struck a chord deep within her, and she responded by saying, "Nothing about you died that night, Evelyn. You were wounded, yes, but what makes you extraordinary is how those wounds have become sources of strength and compassion." With the realization that her path from humiliation to happiness had fundamentally altered her, but not in the manner that Julian had intended for their transformation to take place. He had attempted to reduce her, but she had grown in the opposite direction. She had discovered a deeper connection in the places where he had attempted to alienate her. "I love you," she remarked in a casual tone. The words still new enough between them to carry special weight. "Not because you rescued me, but because you saw me clearly when I couldn't see myself." Marcus' kiss was gentle, reverent, "And I love you, Evelyn Carter, soon to be Thornton, for exactly who you are, brilliant, resilient, and absolutely irreplaceable." Evelyn felt the remaining ghosts of her past loosen their hold on her as the moonlight poured in through the windows and painted silver patterns across their bodies that were entangled. They had a bright future ahead of them, filled with potential and new opportunities for partnership. One that is built on mutual respect, a shared vision, and a love that has been put through the crucible and found to be indestructible. Number 7. There are remnants of the past. In the penthouse, where Evelyn was reviewing fabric samples for their wedding, the winter sun was streaming in through the windows across the space. In a span of only 4 months, she would wed Marcus on her birthday, thereby converting a day that had been associated with humiliation into a date that was celebrated. There was still a sense of triumphant excitement that she felt whenever she thought about it. She felt a vibration on her phone from an unfamiliar number. She would normally let it go to voicemail, but because she was in the process of making preparations for the wedding, she answered the phone in case it was a vendor. She greeted Evelyn Carter in a manner that was professional. Before a voice that she hadn't heard in months responded, there was a little pause till the speaker finally spoke. The voice of Evelyn, not Julian's, but that of a woman. "Who exactly is this?" Evelyn inquired, despite the fact that there was something in the tone of the voice that prompted identification. "My name is Catherine." It was Catherine Hayes. A firmer hold was exerted by Evelyn on her phone. Her mother, Catherine Julian, was a refined and reticent woman who had always maintained a respectful distance from Evelyn during all of their marriage. Miss S. Hayes, Evelyn, acknowledged the statement while maintaining a neutral tone. "Not at all what I expected," Catherine responded. "I know," with a voice that carried an uncertainty that was not familiar to me. "Despite the fact that I would not have called, there are some things about Julian that you ought to be aware of." With a sense of willing patience, Evelyn closed her eyes. "I would want to respectfully inform you, Mrs. Hayes, that my son and I have split up. His worries are no longer mine to worry about." Catherine continued, indifferent to Evelyn's dismissal, "that he is making preparations for something. Something to cause disruptions during your wedding. I was able to overhear him talking on the phone with his attorney about methods to postpone the settlement of your divorce and potentially even fight the finality of the divorce itself." The icy uneasiness that Evelyn felt seeped through her veins. Several months had passed since the divorce was completed. On the other hand, Julian possessed resources and contacts that may potentially lead to difficult legal situations. "For what reason are you telling me this?" The question was posed by Evelyn, who was wary of the unexpected collaboration. A deep sigh from Catherine reverberated throughout the link. Mostly due to the fact that what he did to you that evening was inexcusable. Because I was a better parent than that, I reared him. There is a pause. Moreover, because I discovered what he forced you to sell in order to purchase that watch. Evelyn's free hand moved in an instinctual manner to touch the necklace that belonged to her mother. The sole heirloom that she still possessed. Catherine said in a hushed voice, "Your mother's birthplace. I recall that you brought it up during the very first supper that we had as a family. 1 hour 10 minutes and 32 seconds. The manner in which your mother intended to construct her ideal house for the future there. What a wonderful way to disperse picnics beneath that ancient willow tree." Evelyn's eyes suddenly became filled with tears to her surprise. Until now, she had been unaware that Catherine had been paying attention and had recalled those particulars. Catherine's voice became more powerful as she continued, "I lost my own mother when I was young. My understanding of those relationships is complete. The actions taken by Julian, which included compelling you to give up that relationship and then putting it back in your face. This was an act of savagery that defies description." As she slumped onto the sofa, Evelyn's mind began to comprehend the unexpected information. "I am grateful for the caution, Mrs. Hayes. However, Catherine, the more experienced woman corrects in a gentle manner. Moreover, there is more. I have a strong suspicion that he has been following you. During my visit to his office the previous week, I discovered receipts from a private investigator that were being kept there." The thought sent a shiver down Evelyn's spine. Over the course of the preceding few weeks, she had noticed that she was periodically plagued by the sensation of being watched, something she had previously dismissed as paranoia. Evelyn questioned, why would he do that? Despite the fact that she was afraid she already knew the answer. "Information is power," Catherine responded in a simplistic manner. "And Julian has always needed to feel powerful, especially when he feels threatened." "I'm not a threat to him," Evelyn responded with protest. Catherine retorted, Your happiness is. Your success with Marcus Thornton, your rising profile in the design world, all of it contradicts the narrative he's created, where you're nothing without him." After promising to send any additional information she discovered, Catherine ended the call, leaving Evelyn staring at her phone in stunned silence. She was still sitting there when Marcus returned home 30 minutes later, his smile fading as he assessed her troubled expression. "What's happened?" The question was posed by him as he joined her on the sofa, putting his briefcase beside him. Evelyn explained Catherine's unexpected call the warnings about Julian's surveillance and legal maneuvers. As she spoke, Marcus' expression darkened, but he remained silent, allowing her to finish without interruption. "I should have anticipated this," he said finally, frustration evident in his voice. "Julian's type doesn't surrender control easily. What does he hope to gain?" Evelyn inquired. "The divorce is final. I've moved on, but you're happier." Marcus pointed out, taking her hand, that you're more successful and more visible. Your joint project with that hotel chain made it into the design magazines last month. Meanwhile, his company is struggling after that expose on his lending practices. Catherine was indeed correct. Since the announcement of their engagement, Evelyn had been receiving a plethora of high-profile commissions. This was partially due to her connection with Marcus, but it was also primarily due to her own growing reputation. At the same time, Julian's business had been facing increasing difficulties, with investors becoming increasingly wary of his aggressive strategies. "There was another thing that Catherine mentioned," Evelyn added with considerable reluctance. Marcus's jaw tensed, but his voice remained calm as he said, "She thinks he might have photographs or evidence he's planning to use to embarrass us publicly." "What kind of nature is it?" "Honestly, I have no idea," Evelyn said. "If, on the other hand, he had me following him, then she did not have to finish the notion." Evelyn had been spending the majority of her nights at Marcus' apartment, which indicated that their relationship had become more intimate over the past few months. Despite the fact that they were usually discreet in public, private moments such as a passionate kiss in the elevator or an embrace on Marcus Terrace might theoretically be photographed by a photographer who is motivated and has the appropriate equipment. The statement that Marcus made was that he would not allow you to see behind him. There was a potentially lethal edge to his voice. "This comes to an end now." He stood up and started walking about. When he was experiencing a great deal of distress, Evelyn saw that he developed a tendency. "I have been patient with Julian's petty attacks for your sake, including the ruin of the business and the pressure from the judicial system. Because you desired a clean break with as little controversy as possible, I let my legal staff to handle it in a discreet manner. As Marcus turned to face her, his expression revealed a side of him that was rarely displayed, the merciless strategist that lies behind the compassionate partner. However, the surveillance that threatens our wedding goes beyond the bounds of acceptable behavior. Evelyn observed him, observing the controlled rage that was reflected in his motions and the protective intensity that was appearing in his eyes. Not that Marcus was capable of being fearsome, but rather that he had been holding back all of these months out of respect for her wants. This was a revelation. The question, "What are you suggesting?" was asked by her with a mixture of caution and curiosity. Marcus made his way back to sit next to her, and he took both of her hands in his. It is imperative that Julian comprehends the fact that acts have repercussions. He is vulnerable, his company is overleveraged, and investors are concerned about his company because it has multiple projects that are under regulatory inspection. What Evelyn said was that you want to destroy him in a professional capacity. Rather than a query, this is a recognition. Marcus made the correction, "I want justice." He should be held accountable for his actions, both in the past and in the present, rather than seeking revenge or destruction for its own sake. He presented a plan for strategic acquisition, which would involve the use of shell firms to acquire a majority interest in Julian's struggling business. This would allow them to position themselves to exert influence from within the company. The fact that it was employing legitimate business techniques rather than deceptive strategies made it an elegant and simple commercial strategy. Marcus went on to say that your perspective will be incomparable. You are aware of his blind spots and vulnerabilities, which are revealed in ways that cannot be revealed by financial research. Careful consideration was given to the suggestion by Evelyn. It wasn't about exacting petty revenge or trying to match Julian's level of cruelty. This was about strategic justice, which meant using legitimate ways to hold him accountable while maybe saving employees and customers from a firm that was on the verge of collapsing. She finally admitted, "I never wanted to think about Julian again," and she meant it. Nevertheless, he is adamant about not allowing us to proceed. Perhaps this is the only language that he is able to comprehend. As Marcus studied her face intently, he said in a firm tone, "We do this together or not at all. And we set boundaries. This can't consume our lives or our relationship. We have a wedding to plan, projects to finish, and a future to build." Evelyn nodded, appreciating his clarity. She suggested that they spend 2 hours together each week. They agreed that neither of them should spend more than that amount of time together. A different kind of collaboration that was developing alongside their personal and professional ties. When they parted ways, Evelyn observed something unexpected in Marcus's eyes. She saw a flicker of uncertainty that surprised her. "What is it?" she asked. Marcus paused for a moment before responding, "That's uncharacteristic of a man who is typically so decisive. I want you to be certain that this is what you want, that I'm not pushing you into something that contradicts your values." The vulnerability in his question touched Evelyn deeply. Even now, planning to defend what they were building together, Marcus was concerned about respecting her autonomy, her moral compass. "I believe in compassion," she said thoughtfully. "But I also believe in justice, in boundaries, in protecting what matters." Her hand cupped his face gently. "This isn't about becoming like Julian. It's about standing firmly in our own power." Relief softened Marcus's features. That's exactly it. Not vengeance, but refusing to be victimized. Something shifted between them in that moment. A deepening of understanding, a recognition of shared principles. There was freedom in acknowledging that sometimes justice required action, not just dignified endurance. "There's something else," Marcus said, his expression becoming more serious once more. "While we were addressing Julian's threats," he said, "I want to pursue another project simultaneously." "What kind of project is it?" Evelyn had been concerned that confronting Julian might drag them into darkness. However, she experienced an unexpected sense of liberation instead. "Finding your mother's land," Evelyn glanced at him, her heart stuttering. "The developer did not begin construction on the site until several months ago. Marcus, it is no longer there." However, he acknowledged that property transactions produce paper trails. "Perhaps," he said, "the progression of events may be slowed down or altered. At the very least, we might be able to avoid losing some aspect of the property, such as the willow tree or a certain section of the land. Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes at his understanding of what truly mattered to her. Not vengeance against Julian, but reclaiming what had been lost. The connection to her mother, the physical space that held her most precious memories. "You would do that," she whispered. "In a heartbeat," Marcus replied, his voice rough with emotion, "not to erase what happened, but to restore something precious that was taken from you." Evelyn kissed him with all the emotion she couldn't express in words. This gesture embodied everything that made Marcus extraordinary. His ability to understand what truly mattered to her. His commitment to healing rather than merely avenging past wounds. As moonlight filtered through the windows, Evelyn's last conscious thought before sleep claimed them was not of Julian's threats, but of the profound difference between the two men who had shaped her recent life. One who had exploited her vulnerabilities and one who honored them as sacred trust. Chapter 8. The Strategic Revenge. 6 weeks into their carefully orchestrated plan, Evelyn and Marcus sat in his home office, reviewing financial reports. Outside, spring rain tapped against the windows, creating a soothing backdrop to their focused work. Evelyn nodded, still amazed at how effectively they had concealed Marcus' involvement. Summit and Coastal were both legitimate investment companies in Marcus' vast portfolio. Marcus noted that Summit Ventures had acquired 18% of Hayes' investment stock, highlighting the figures on his tablet. When combined with the shares that were purchased through Coastal Partners, we now control 27% of Hayes' investment stock. As opposed to being a coordinated approach, their acquisitions of Julian's struggling company appeared to be typical market acquisitions. "What is our target threshold?" she inquired as she examined the intricate financial data with an increasing sense of self-assurance. These weekly planning meetings had taught her more about company finance than she had learnt over the entirety of her marriage to Julian. 40% would give us effective control given how widely the remaining shares are distributed, Marcus replied. We should reach that within 3 weeks if the stock price continues to fall. The price was indeed falling steadily, inexorably as Julian's desperate attempts to secure new investors failed. His company's reputation had been further damaged when 3 of his senior executives resigned in the same week, citing ethical concerns about leadership decisions. Evelyn had identified the executives as decent people who were trapped in Julian's toxic organization. Marcus had arranged discreet meetings with them, offering them positions in his subsidiaries if they chose to leave Hayes Investments while maintaining their professional integrity. As a result, those resignations had not been a coincidence. Evelyn announced that Brighton Financials had sent in their withdrawal letter yesterday. She was referring to one of Julian's largest remaining investors. Their board was particularly concerned about the discrepancies that I discovered in the Elmwood project reports. Marcus smiled appreciatively and said, "Your insight has been invaluable. No external audit would have caught those inconsistencies." Evelyn felt a complex mix of emotions. During her marriage, Julian had dismissed her interest in his business as cute, while utilizing her social connections for his advancement. Now, those years of observing from the periphery had become powerful knowledge. She knew which projects Julian had misrepresented to investors, which partnerships he had secured through questionable methods, which numbers had been artfully manipulated in presentations. Marcus put his tablet down and gave her his full attention. "It feels strange," she admitted, "using what I had learned during my marriage as an example." "Do you have any second thoughts?" she said firmly, just reflecting on the irony. Julian had never thought that I was paying attention, and he had never valued my intelligence. Now, the very qualities that he dismissed are helping to hold him accountable. Evelyn got up from her chair and moved to the window that was streaked with rain. "I received another message from him. Today, he sent me more threats and more photos that he had manipulated. He is becoming increasingly desperate." Marcus came to stand behind her, his strong hands gently massaging the tension from her shoulders. "I don't think he has yet realized what is going on. His ego won't allow him to see the pattern." She leaned back against Marcus' chest, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "He believes his company's problems stem from market forces and disloyal employees. Not a coordinated strategy." Marcus' lips brushed the sensitive spot below her ear. "The next phase begins tomorrow. Are you ready?" Evelyn turned in his arms and searched his eyes. The next phase would move beyond defensive measures to a more active dismantling of Julian's professional facade. "I am ready." Their kiss contained the intensity that had characterized their relationship ever since they decided to pursue justice together. Passion was deepened by the fact that they shared a common goal. Desire heightened by mutual respect. Evelyn had never experienced anything like it. This perfect fusion of emotional and intellectual connection. "We have 1 more hour scheduled for strategic planning," Marcus murmured against her lips, his hands already working at the buttons of her blouse. "I suggest we use it more creatively," Evelyn laughed, already helping him remove his shirt. "A strategic pivot." "Exactly." His smile was both tender and wickedly enticing as he lifted her onto the desk. Financial reports scattered as he moved between her thighs. All work and no play makes for poor strategic thinking. Later, as they lay tangled together on the office sofa, Evelyn marveled at how different the intimacy was with Marcus in comparison to the intimacy she had experienced with her previous marriage. "You're thinking very loudly," Marcus observed, tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. Evelyn smiled and pressed a kiss to his chest, simply appreciating the present while letting go of the past. Julian's sexual encounters had eventually become transactional, providing him with an additional means of demonstrating his control. Marcus, on the other hand, continued to experience sex as a celebration of equal desire. His arms tightened around her. "Speaking of the present, there's something I've been wanting to show you." Reluctantly disengaging from their embrace, Marcus got his tablet and returned to the sofa, pulling Evelyn into him as he opened a secure folder. "What am I looking at?" While she was looking at what seemed to be property records, she posed the question. "Your mother's land," Marcus said in a soft voice. "I've been negotiating with the developer who purchased it. After you sold it for Julian's watch." Evelyn's breath caught. Even though she had come to terms with the fact that she would no longer have access to her mother's property, the mention of it still evoked strong feelings. Marcus continued by saying that the development had been halted due to permit issues. "The company is willing to sell the parcel back at a premium, of course, but within reach." Tears filled Evelyn's eyes as she stared at the documents. "You would do that?" "In a heartbeat," Marcus replied, his voice rough with feeling, "not to erase what happened, but to restore something precious that was taken from you." Evelyn kissed him with all the emotion she couldn't express in words. This gesture embodied everything that made Marcus extraordinary: his ability to understand what truly mattered to her, his commitment to healing rather than merely avenging past wounds. When they finally parted, Marcus brushed away a tear from her cheek. "Is that a yes to pursuing this?" "Yes," Evelyn whispered. "But not just for me, for us." I was hoping that you would say that the tenderness in Marcus' expression made her heart ache with love. Their second lovemaking was slower and deeper, creating a physical manifestation of the emotional territory that they had just explored together. "It was a place where we could build something together, something that had roots in my past but faces toward our future." Afterward, as the rain continued its gentle rhythm against the windows, they returned to their strategic planning with renewed focus. "Tomorrow," Marcus said, outlining the next steps, "Sterling Bank will call in Julian's corporate loans for review, citing industry volatility concerns. Simultaneously, my legal team will file those trademark complaints regarding the Crestwood development names." Evelyn nodded, adding, "And I'll meet with Nora Bennett from the Business Journal." Their plan was comprehensive but ethical. There was no fabricated evidence, no illegal tactics, and it was simply the strategic application of pressure to a business structure that had already been compromised by Julian's own actions. "She has been investigating predatory lending practices, and she would be very interested in those documents from former clients." After 3 more weeks, Marcus estimated, after studying their timeline, they will have controlling interest and will be able to call for a full board review. Evelyn's phone rang with an alert and an industry publication announcing that Julian Hayes would be receiving the Entrepreneurial Excellence Award at the Commerce Association Gala the following month. The goal was not simply to acquire his company. Rather, it was to ensure that his business practices were subjected to appropriate scrutiny. She pointed out that he still had friends in high places, and then she showed Marcus the notification. Marcus's expression changed to one of shrewd calculation. "That gala would be the ideal setting for the final phase of our plan." "What are you thinking?" "A public revelation, but with absolute precision. There would be no collateral damage to innocent employees or legitimate projects." With a serious expression on his face, he took her hand and said, "This is not about humiliating him the way he humiliated you, Evelyn. It is about proper accountability for years of business practices that have hurt clients, employees, and investors." Evelyn nodded, expressing her appreciation for the clear ethical boundaries that Marcus maintained, even when he was pursuing justice. The gala is exactly 1 month before our wedding. Perfect timing to close this chapter completely. Marcus lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her engagement ring, and then we focus entirely on our future. No more looking back. As they finalized their strategy for the coming weeks, Evelyn felt a profound sense of empowerment. This was not the terrible vengeance of a broken heart. Rather, it was the measured response of a woman who had found her strength and a spouse who respected it. Julian had intended to shatter her by humiliating her in public, but instead, he had set in motion events that lead her to realize her truest self and the love that she had for herself. There was a certain poetic justice in that reality, one that no strategic plan could have designed, but which Evelyn treasured above all else. Chapter 9. Justice served. The Commerce Association Gala transformed the grand ballroom of the Crestmont Hotel into a glittering showcase of wealth and influence. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light over tables adorned with elaborate floral arrangements, while the city's business elite worked with practiced charm. Evelyn stood at the entrance, her hand tucked securely in Marcus's arm, acutely aware of the symmetry. Almost a year ago, she had entered a different ballroom on her ill-fated anniversary night. Tonight, she wore deep indigo rather than scarlet, and her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo that was adorned with sapphire pins, which were actually a gift from Marcus to mark 3 months until their wedding. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked softly, his eyes conveying both concern and admiration. Evelyn nodded, drawing strength from his presence and the knowledge of what they had accomplished together over the past months. They had methodically acquired 42% of Hayes' investment stock through various holdings, positioned key allies on the corporate board, and compiled irrefutable documentation of Julian's questionable business practices. As they made their way through the crowd, Evelyn felt curious gazes following them. Their relationship had become a topic of discussion in the business world. The successful designer who had risen from public humiliation to partnership with one of the city's most respected developers was the subject of business gossip regarding their relationship. Some whispered about opportunism, others about a fairy tale redemption. None knew the truth of the deep, multifaceted bond they had forged. Evelyn Carter. A familiar voice cut through her thoughts. "I'm surprised to see you here." Julian stood before them, champagne in hand, his expression a practiced mask of nonchalance. Though impeccably dressed in an expensive tuxedo, Evelyn noted signs of strain around his eyes, the slight tension in his smile. Marcus's hand pressed reassuringly against the small of Evelyn's back, but he remained silent, allowing her to lead this encounter as they had agreed. "Julian," she acknowledged calmly, "congratulations on your award." His gaze flickered dismissively to Marcus before returning to her. "I see that you are enjoying your moment in the spotlight. However, I am curious about how long Mr. Thornton's interest will keep him interested once the novelty wears off." "I've learned the difference between genuine partnership and exploitation, Julian," Evelyn said in a level-headed manner. "It's been quite educational." Julian's eyes caught a glimpse of something that was potentially hazardous. "Educational enough to understand the precarious nature of reputation in our circles?" Marcus then spoke, his tone polite but with a steely undertone, and he said, "I still have those photos that we discussed. Hayes, I suggest you reconsider any plans involving manipulated images or defamation. The legal consequences would be substantial. Always hiding behind your billionaire boyfriend." Julian sneered at Evelyn. "Some things never change." Evelyn smiled, the serene confidence in her expression clearly unsettling her ex-husband. As they moved away, Marcus drew near to whisper, who was properly handled, and asked, "Are you all right?" "Julian, in fact, everything has changed. Enjoy your reward." They took their seats at a table near the front of the room, carefully positioned to obtain a view of both the stage and Julian's table, which was located across the room. "Better than all right," Evelyn said in an honest manner. "He has no power over me anymore." The evening progressed through dinner and preliminary speeches, the tension building within Evelyn like a perfectly orchestrated crescendo. When the association president approached the podium to present the Entrepreneurial Excellence Award, Evelyn exchanged a subtle nod with Marcus. It was time. "Before we present tonight's honor," the president announced, "we have a special presentation from Marcus Thornton of Thornton Sustainable Development, who has an exciting announcement relevant to our community." Julian's head snapped up, confusion evident in his expression as Marcus moved confidently to the stage. This deviation from the program had not been publicized, a last-minute arrangement facilitated by Marcus' substantial donation to the Association Scholarship Fund. "Thank you," Marcus began, his commanding presence immediately captivating the audience. A multimedia presentation illuminated the screens flanking the stage, displaying the corporate logo of Hayes Investments. As many of you are aware, my company is dedicated to ethical development that serves communities while providing returns to investors. Tonight, I am pleased to have the opportunity to announce our most recent acquisition. Thornton Sustainable Development has acquired a controlling interest in Hayes Investments, effective as of today's market close. Marcus continued to operate without any problems. We are looking forward to incorporating their portfolio into our ethical business framework. Following a comprehensive corporate restructuring, the room erupted in murmuring. Evelyn watched Julian's face lose color as he comprehended the implications of the situation. Marcus was maintaining his measured and professional tone throughout the process. As part of our due diligence process, we have identified several projects that require immediate attention to address compliance concerns. Not only had he lost control of his company, but the restructuring clearly suggested that an audit of his business practices was necessary. The presentation then shifted to show documentation of the Elmwood development, which was the project where Evelyn was aware that Julian had misrepresented environmental impact studies in order to obtain permits. Marcus explained that transparency is essential to rebuilding investor confidence, and he detailed specific remediation plans without explicitly stating what had necessitated them. As Marcus outlined the new direction for Hayes Investments, Evelyn watched Julian attempt to maintain composure while his knuckles become white around his champagne flute. His approach was masterful, as he presented the information as straightforward business restructuring rather than accusation, while simultaneously ensuring that everyone in the room understood the subtext. Julian was already on his feet and making his way toward them with barely restrained rage when Marcus returned to their table amid great applause. "You orchestrated this," he snarled, leaning over their table. Marcus's return was met with exuberant acclaim. Marcus watched him with composure as he said, "You manipulated the market in order to seize my company. According to the standard operating procedure for a business, Mr. We made acceptable investments in a company that was undervalued and had potential assets." "Hayes, this is a personal vendetta," Julian emphasized, raising his voice to the point that it drew attention from the tables that were immediately adjacent to him. As she stood there, Evelyn faced him directly. "Not at all, Julian. The concept of accountability is something that you have ignored for an excessively long time." She took out a tiny velvet box from her evening bag and presented it to her. As she opened it to expose the sapphire watch, which had been the impetus for their initial confrontation, she stated, "I believe this belongs to you." In a contemptuous tone, he stated, "I don't require that." "I don't either," Evelyn said in response. "It is a symbol of all that is wrong with our relationship, which has a superficial beauty that serves to disguise empty values." The box was placed on the table in the middle of the two of them. "You may think of it as a break from our history. My mother's farm, on the other hand, is mine to retain." The look on Julian's face changed from one of wrath to one of perplexity. That piece of land was sold and then bought back again. Marcus made a smooth interjection at the present worth of the market. After finally gaining an understanding of the scope of their scheme, Julian's expression changed to one of comprehension. It wasn't simply the acquisition of the firm, it was also the reclaiming of what he had made Evelyn give up against her will. He vowed, "You won't get away with this," as his composure began to deteriorate even further. "Unless you would prefer to address those issues internally during the transition, I have friends who work for the Commerce Commission. Tomorrow, the Regulatory Board will receive complete documentation of the Elmwood environmental reports," Evelyn interrupted. "Additionally, the loan restructuring on the Bayview properties will also be received." Evelyn continued quietly, "You were right about one thing, Julian. I was paying attention during our marriage, just not to the things you thought were important. While you were monitoring my appearance and social connections, I was observing business practices that should never have been normalized." Julian stared at her, momentarily losing his ability to speak as he was confronted with her detailed knowledge of his most problematic projects. The association president approached, sensing the tension. "Is everything all right here?" "Perfectly fine," Marcus assured him. "Mr. Hayes was just congratulating us on the acquisition." The president beamed. "Excellent, Julian. We're ready for your award presentation now." Trapped by social convention, Julian had no choice but to follow the president toward the stage. "He knows," Evelyn mumbled as she and Marcus retook their seats. "Yes," Marcus agreed. "And more importantly, he knows we know." He gave a single glance back as he walked away, his expression a mixture of exasperation and the beginnings of terror. The board meeting tomorrow will determine whether he cooperates with the restructuring or faces public disclosure of his practices. Evelyn watched as Julian accepted his award with a strange smile. His speech noticeably shorter than planned. The irony wasn't lost on her receiving an Excellence Award minutes after learning his business empire was crumbling due to his own ethical failures. When the gala concluded, Marcus led Evelyn to the terrace overlooking the city lights. "How are you feeling?" The spring night was ideal. It was warm, and there was a soft breeze that carried the perfume of flowers that were already flowering from the hotel gardens below. Evelyn gave great consideration to the topic before ultimately responding. "It's not because of what happened to Julian. Rather, it's because I finally closed that chapter on my own terms," he inquired, observing her expression in the gentle illumination. Marcus smiled, drawing her into his arms. "You were magnificent tonight. Your strength continues to astonish me." "It was our strategy," she reminded him, her hands coming to rest against his chest. "Our justice." "True," he acknowledged. "But watching you face him so composed, so clearly beyond his power to hurt you, that was all Evelyn Carter, the woman I fall more deeply in love with every day." Their kiss beneath the stars held the sweetness of victory, not over an enemy, but over the shadows of doubt and pain that had once threatened to define Evelyn's story. As Marcus' arms enfolded her, she knew with absolute certainty that justice had been served not through vengeance, but through the triumph of integrity over manipulation, of authentic love over exploitation. "Take me home," she muttered against his lips. "We have a wedding to plan and a future to build." Marcus' smile carried all the promises she would ever need. "Home, it is, but possibly with a small detour." "What type of detour?" Evelyn inquired, captivated by the mischievous glint in his eyes. "I thought we might drive past your mother's land," he suggested. "Under the moonlight, you can begin to envision what we'll create there together." Evelyn's heart swelled with love for this man who understood so perfectly what would bring her joy in this moment of closure. "That sounds perfect." As they left the gala hand in hand, Evelyn glanced back once at the ballroom where Julian stood alone, the weight of consequences finally settling on his shoulders. She felt not triumph, but a quiet certainty that the scales had balanced at last. Chapter 10. The ultimate reckoning. 1 year to the day after Evelyn's public humiliation, the grand ballroom of the Regency Hotel had been transformed once again. This time, instead of anniversary decorations, the space bloomed with cascades of white leaves and blue delphiniums, elegant table settings glittering with crystal and silver, a wedding celebration, but also a reclamation. Evelyn taking back a date that had once brought her to her knees. In the bridal suite, Amara adjusted the delicate lace of Evelyn's gown, an original design combining classic silhouettes with modern elements, much like the woman herself. "Nervous?" Amara asked, securing the last pearl button. Evelyn shook her head, studying her reflection. The woman who looked back bore little resemblance to the devastated figure who had collapsed in tears on this same date a year ago. Her eyes held confidence rather than desperate hope, and her smile was genuine rather than carefully maintained. She responded that she was not nervous, and that she was just complete. The suite door opened to admit Leah, Marcus's sister, who was 16 years old and looking absolutely stunning in her bridesmaid dress. "He's here," she announced with a conspiratorial grin. "Right on schedule." Evelyn turned from the mirror, momentarily confused. "Marcus, he's not supposed to see me before." "Not Marcus," Leah clarified, her expression turning serious. "Julian, he just arrived." "Exactly as you predicted." A small smile curved Evelyn's lips. "Perfect." Following the Commerce Association gala that took place 3 months ago, Julian was confronted with the consequences of his business practices. The board of Hayes Investments, which is now controlled by Marcus, had presented him with a choice. He could either resign quietly with a modest severance package, or he could face a comprehensive audit that would likely trigger regulatory investigations. Julian had chosen the former option, but his resentment continued to grow. 2 weeks ago, through carefully arranged channels, information about Evelyn and Marcus' wedding date and venue had reached him. The invitation had never been sent, but Evelyn had known Julian's wounded pride would bring him here today. Unable to resist witnessing her happiness, perhaps even harboring fantasies of disrupting it. "Is everything in place?" she inquired. The confirmation was given by Leah, who nodded. "Security has been briefed. The media is positioned exactly where you specified." Amara checked her watch. "Elliot, Marcus' head of security, should be approaching him now." Elliot had specific instructions for handling Julian, which included not removing him immediately but rather guiding events according to the carefully orchestrated plan that Evelyn and Marcus had designed together, which was their final act of justice. "I need a moment alone," Evelyn said, squeezing Amara's hand gratefully. When her friends had departed, Evelyn moved to the window overlooking the hotel's entrance courtyard. From this vantage point, she could see Elliot approaching Julian, who stood uncertainly at the perimeter of arriving guests. The conversation appeared cordial, Julian's expression shifting from defiance to surprise as Elliot gestured toward the building's side entrance. Evelyn's phone chimed with a message from Marcus. "Our guest has arrived, proceeding as planned. I love you beyond measure." She smiled, typing a quick response. "See you at the altar. I'll be the one in white." Returning to the mirror for a final appraisal, Evelyn touched the compass necklace Marcus had given her during his first true proposal. She had incorporated it into her wedding ensemble, the delicate silver pendant nestled against her collarbones above the sweetheart neckline of her gown. North still pointed north, as Marcus had said, a constant in a world of change. A soft knock at the door was followed by the entrance of her father, distinguished in his formal attire, eyes growing misty at the sight of his daughter as a bride. "It's time, sweetheart," he said, offering his arm. "Ready to start your new beginning?" Evelyn took a deep breath, feeling absolute certainty settle in her heart. More than ready. The wedding ceremony unfolded with flawless elegance. Evelyn walked down the aisle toward Marcus, whose expression of wonder and devotion nearly brought her to tears. Their vows, written together during quiet evenings in their home, spoke of partnership, respect, and a love tested by fire and found unbreakable. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, their kiss held both tender promise and passionate certainty, drawing appreciative applause from their guests. As they turned to face their friends and family, Evelyn noticed a side door discreetly opening to admit Elliot, escorting Julian to a position at the back of the ballroom, exactly as planned. While the newlyweds were greeting their guests, the reception began with champagne and the passing of wine. 1 hour into the celebration, Marcus gave a subtle nod to the conductor of the orchestra, who led the musicians into a gentle conclusion of their current piece. Marcus then took Evelyn's hand and led her to the small stage where the orchestra did their performance. "Friends and family," Marcus began, his voice warm with genuine emotion. "Evelyn and I thank you for sharing this day of new beginnings. Your presence transforms a celebration into a true communion of hearts." Marcus's voice was warm with genuine emotion. Additionally, a microphone was waiting for them. Evelyn knew that these individuals were important figures in the city's philanthropic community. His gaze found Evelyn's filled with love and shared purpose. As many of you know, this date holds special significance. 1 year ago, Evelyn faced an experience that might have broken someone of lesser character. Instead, she transformed pain into purpose, betrayal into blessing. From the corner of her eye, Evelyn could see Julian shifting uncomfortably near the back of the room, Elliot standing discreetly nearby. The gathered guests, unaware of his presence, focused entirely on the radiant couple. "Today," Marcus continued, "we want to share how love creates not just personal joy, but ripples of positive change. Evelyn and I are honored to announce the establishment of the Horizon Foundation dedicated to supporting survivors of emotional and financial abuse in rebuilding their lives." And presented Evelyn with a ceremonial check that represented their personal donation to officially launch the foundation. Horizon Haven is not just the name of the development that Marcus and I created together professionally. It represents the journey that many women and men face when extracting themselves from toxic relationships, Evelyn said as she took the microphone and addressed their guests with composed grace. Her gaze swept meaningfully across the ballroom, briefly connecting with Julian's stunned expression before continuing without missing a beat. Applause filled the ballroom as Evelyn and Marcus unveiled the foundation's logo, which was a stylized horizon with rays forming a protective embrace. The foundation will provide emergency housing assistance, legal counsel, and business mentorship to those who are rebuilding after experiencing some form of relationship trauma. She added, with a quiet emphasis, that sometimes the most valuable lesson from pain is the strength to help others heal. As the orchestra resumed playing and the couple returned to their guests, Evelyn noticed with satisfaction that Elliot was now walking Julian toward the exit. The photographers came in closer, catching the passion of the occasion from a variety of perspectives, guaranteeing that the event would receive extensive media coverage. Marcus muttered as they went across the dance floor, "Mission accomplished." Their plan had been executed precisely, and he had been able to witness her entire enjoyment while also being forced to observe how thoroughly she had twisted his malice into something important and helpful. "Perfectly," Evelyn affirmed confidently. "Did you see his face when we announced the foundation? Priceless." Marcus's laugh was low and appreciative as he brought her closer for their first official dance as husband and wife. "It was priceless. Remind me never to cross you, Mrs. S. Thornton. Your tactical mind is formidable." "I prefer to use my powers for good," she said, looking up at him as they moved in perfect synchronicity. "I prefer to use my powers for good. I will, however, make allowances for the sake of justice when it is required." Marcus's demeanor became more severe as the music intensified for them all around them. "Evelyn, are you experiencing joy?" In all honesty, this powerful man who cared more about her genuine happiness than any external accomplishment was the one who asked her this question, and it had a profound impact on her. Truthfully, she responded that she was happier than I could have ever imagined imaginable. There was no mention of Julian today. The focus was on our recovering this date in its entirety again. "And so we have," Marcus agreed, his arms tightening around her waist as he executed a perfect turn that made her gown swirl elegantly. "The past is finally just the past." Later that night, as their reception continued with jubilant celebration, Marcus led Evelyn away from their guests to a private terrace overlooking the city lights. He explained that a small table had been set up with 2 flutes of champagne and a velvet box. "This is the last wedding gift," he said, opening the box to reveal a lovely sapphire bracelet. On the night that he had initially proposed to her using the compass, the stones were set in a way that was a reflection of the constellation that was visible. "It's nothing short of exquisite," Evelyn said as he wrapped it around her wrist. Marcus's response was, like its owner, which was a reiteration of his remarks from the previous evening at the museum gala. At this point, Evelyn did not raise any objections to the comparison. Marcus took his wife into his arms as they stood beneath the same constellations that had served as witnesses to their beginning. The old desire that they shared grew deeper in their kiss, but it also contained the fresh wonder of their newly acquired position as husband and wife. Evelyn muttered against his lips, "We should return to our guests," despite the fact that her body naturally molded itself closer to his. "They won't miss us for a few minutes," Marcus answered, his hands following the graceful line of her back through the lace of her gown. "They won't miss us for those few minutes. In addition, I have been waiting all day for the opportunity to spend some time alone with you, even if it is just for a short period of time." The sensation of his touch stoked the need that had only intensified over the course of their months spent together. A kiss from Evelyn was her response, and it promised that they would be able to realize that desire later on, when they would retreat to the presidential suite, which was waiting for them above. She teased him while adjusting his bow tie with the same level of familiarity that she had seen him do before. Marcus took her hand and planted a passionate kiss on the palm of her hand. "For your benefit. At all times, although today might be the night that puts that patience to the test." They returned to their party, a perfect symphony of joy and desire, respect and passion, the past reconciled, and the future welcomed. Their laughing, which was warm and genuine, flowed into the night air as they returned to their celebration. 1 year later, Evelyn was standing on the expansive porch of the house that she and Marcus had constructed on the land that belonged to her mother. She had her palm resting protectively on her big belly as she watched Marcus arrange furniture on the patio that overlooked the garden that her mother had always dreamed of developing. Already assisting scores of abuse survivors in regaining their independence, the Horizon Foundation had developed above their expectations, showing that it had exceeded their goals. The design company that Evelyn owned and operated had grown to include a mentoring program for young women who were transitioning into creative areas. Through sustained efforts, Marcus's sustainable development company continued to transform metropolitan areas into communities that were conducive to the flourishing of people of varying income levels. Julian, on the other hand, was unsuccessful in his endeavor to reinstate his career in a different place since his reputation followed him there. At the time that Evelyn had last heard from him, He was employed in middle management at a small investment firm. He had not been destroyed, but rather contained by the inevitable consequences that his deeds had brought about. Marcus questioned her, "What are you thinking about, love?" as he approached her and stood next to her, his hand covering hers over their unborn child. In the process of leaning into his hug, Evelyn felt the baby kick against their hands that were connected together. Marcus gave her a soft kiss on the temple and then proceeded to tell her about journeys. How the worst night of my life led me to the best years of my life. Evelyn stated, "Life has a way of balancing accounts eventually." "It does," she acknowledged, turning in his arms to face him fully. "However, there are times when it requires a little bit of strategic assistance." While he was drawing her closer, Marcus's laugh rumbled against her. He was aware of the fact that she was pregnant. "Oh, I think you can handle that lesson," Evelyn responded with a smile. "Remind me to tell our daughter that she should never cross her mother. It is my intention to instruct her on how to construct something beautiful out of whatever raw materials life may supply." They stood together in the house that had been constructed on land that had been reclaimed as the sun began to set, painting the sky with tones of golden rose. Two people who had discovered in each other not only passion and partnership, but also the most uncommon form of love, a love that healed past wounds while creating future joys, a love that recognized value beneath damage, and a love that transformed broken pieces into a mosaic that was more beautiful than either of them could have created on their own. It was a tribute to the human heart's ability for resiliency, atonement, and renaissance that their tale had began with treachery, but it would continue with love that knew no bounds. The heart of a sapphire, which had been broken in the past, has been refashioned into something that is far more valuable and unbreakable.